Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. In today's episode, I'll be doing a quick EMA to try and answer some questions about current events and overall what's been going on. So, as you can see, well, as you'll still see when you get here, hopefully, um, I've actually got new equipment. And it's all thanks to the people who've helped out. And I really appreciate everyone who did help out supporting this channel to get some equipment that was vitally needed. This is the best mic I've ever had in my life, and it's unbelievable. And I can't believe that with the help and support of you viewers that we've been able to do this. And I've got a little surprise for everyone who donated and helped out because you've done such a good job at helping the channel. You've helped out so much, and I am so grateful for how much you've given. I've got a surprise in for everyone, so I'll get on to that later. Hello, Metolsi. I think that's how you say it, and hello everyone else. Hope everyone's having a lovely evening. Sorry that the live stream's a bit late tonight, but yeah, better late than never, I suppose. And yeah, so today's just going to be a quick AMA, really. Just going to answer a few questions and see what kind of philosophical discussions we can have tonight. And let's find out. Hello, Ryan. Nice to have you here. Right. Righty-ho. Am I coming through okay? I hope the audio's fine for once. Hi there, mind. So. Am I coming through? Oh, dear me. Right, so. Sup, Brainstorm? Oh, thank you. I hope you are all having a lovely evening. If you've got any questions, just drop them in the chat. And yeah, we'll talk about philosophy. Actually got a big surprise coming up for everyone who donated. So if anyone donated is watching this, be excited. Be excited. Hello, Lewis. Hope you're well. Nice to see you back. Sorry about the late stream. And just make sure that there are no distractions within this stream. How's everyone doing tonight? Are they having a good night? Oh my god, alright, that that escalated quickly. Right, so just to answer those questions that have dropped in the chat, one says, do you think there is a genuine distinction between the natural and the supernatural? Really good question, and something that I haven't touched on since I've done theology, if I'm honest. A very big, important distinction for theology because of the prevalence of miracles. What would I say? Was there a difference between the natural and the supernatural? Theologically, the idea is that miracles, if they are natural, are possible. That's the way to overcome like Hume's criticism of miracles. What do I think? Do I think that there is a genuine distinction between the natural and the supernatural? I guess it depends on what we define nature as in the first place. If we define nature as being like sense perception wise, then obviously then there's supernatural things which would sometimes be considered even natural. If we would take nature as something that is, tangible and testable, which I think is probably more reasonable, do I think that there is a distinction between the natural and the supernatural? Because then you could have something like Plato's world of forms, which would be supernatural. I suppose... I suppose that there could be a supernatural distinction, even in physics, arguably, if there was something that transcended our ability to either to measure. What I was thinking is like multiverse theories. Would that count as supernatural? It's beyond our natural capacity to prove without, it's abstract mathematics. I mean, but it's provable. Does it have to require like some sort of mystical belief? Like something that's like purely based on faith? In which case, then I would say that there was a distinction between natural and supernatural. If not, then I would say that there is only varying levels of nature based on our ability to measure and comprehend. It's quite a tricky one. I mean, it's been a while since I've went into that though, but thanks for the question. I'll definitely do more reading and get back to you. And then the next one, which made me gasp a little bit, is necrophilia okay? No. So why I'm going to say it's not okay isn't actually because of the dead person. I think that there's two reasons. I think one, it's because of the person committing the act. I think that if you're having those kinds of desires, that you're probably not all right, especially in our society. If you're desiring those things, then there's probably something going wrong. It could lead to people committing acts of murder, and I would take a virtue ethicist position on this. I'd say that it could essentially, I don't know if anyone knows the famous case, I can't remember the guy's names actually, who Psycho was based off. He actually started grave robbing. It was a guy who made like a suit out of a woman, like out of various body parts of women, lived in a house of like death. Horrible guy. Caused PTSD actually to most of the people, like a lot of the people that actually entered his house. But he ended up killing women because he couldn't get the body parts from grave robbing. And I could see the same sort of thing happening. But then obviously there comes to the point of the families. You're desecrating what is something that is important to people who of their loved ones, essentially. You people, like the dead person may not have any interests at this point. But there's two things that I think could be considered. The interests of them when they're alive, of how they wanted their corpse to be treated, how they wish to be remembered, and so on. And it would cause them genuine distress if they thought that was going to happen to them, perhaps after they're dead. People take, distress at those things. Some people don't like the idea of, for example, giving organs up for transplant, because of the losing their eyes and stuff like that. It makes people feel uncomfortable. And then I would say the families would have an emotional connection to the individual, and the idea of it desecrating, arguably, the corpse of their loved one would cause them genuine distress. So no, I don't think a necrophilia is okay. I don't really think there's a good case to argue for it unless there was a massive shift in society. And that would be that'd be all. Yeah. No, thank you for the question. Yeah. One second, let's check these questions out. What do I think that the most persuasive argument for veganism is? Well, I'd say it's my argument. What are you talking about? I just need to upload a video for it. But yeah, I'd say honestly, I'd say a positive case. I think that Peter Singer's is pretty good, to be honest. I think it's actually pretty brilliant. Like if you read Animal Liberation, or if you read Tom Regan's The Case for Animal Rights, and you're not moved, I'd be surprised. But honestly, I would say that you need a positive case arguing from the ground up, which is why I'm doing my PhD on it. Because I haven't seen anything like that really kicking about. So I would probably say that you want to have a full dialectic on it, not some half-baked dialectic. None of this like, we're making loads of assumptions. I want something that is truly fortified against the individual who is the moral skeptic. So thank you for your question. What do you guys think of the new audio, by the way? This is thanks to some really lovely. I think I've already thanked them. I've already thanked the people who've donated already, but I would like to thank you again. I cannot be more grateful for this mic and this equipment. This is unbelievable. Hopefully we'll never have technical issues with the audio again. I can't promise with the camera and anything else, but the audio equipment is now spot on, and I can't see any real problems with it. But you know, we'll see. Hopefully I'm going to get the money together and buy even more stuff to invest in the channel and make this channel one of the highest quality channels on YouTube, and that is my goal. To engage with you and to engage with philosophy and really get the questions going, to really get people thinking and trying to understand reality as it is. But thank you everyone who donated, and I've got a special surprise which I'll announce later on in the video. I'm doing good. Thank you, Quine. Thank you. I'm glad to hear you're doing well too. Great afternoon here in California, except for the ash falling from the sky. Oh God, what's happening in California, man? Is that the forest fires? My God. Well, stay safe. I hope you're okay. Don't breathe it in, you know. I see no way of falsifier testify the supernatural. Neither do I. Well, depending on how we'd define it. Yeah, anything that could be explained by ideal science. In which case, I think that the supernatural, then the supernatural would probably, yeah, it would be separate. But then I would probably say that it's whether, I don't know, man, because you could have something that ideal science couldn't explain yet. We could. I'll have to think about it. What broadly might differentiate a determinist or, i.g., incompatibilist from a compatibilist with how they act towards others? What stops determinists from effectively acting as compatibilists? Well, I think the point is that in reality, like, there's no way to get away from the illusion of free will, regardless of whether free will was the case or not. So I wouldn't expect a change in behavior. Like, if there was a change in behavior, if someone changes their behavior because of determinism, then the determinist would just say that they were determined to do that, and the free will person, like you know, the compatibilist or anyone who believes in free will, would essentially just say that they've changed their behavior because of a false belief. So when it comes down to behavioral changes, I don't think there's any, like, that doesn't really show whether the metaphysical position of free will is true or not. No, not really. But I think we should act as if it definitely were the case regardless. And I think there's arguments made for that you have to assume that we'll have free will. And I think that's somewhat the case. A trolley dilemma. Well, thank you for the question, by the way, Quine. A trolley dilemma where one lane there's a deer and the other a human kid. Which would you choose and kill, and why? I would probably choose the deer for a few reasons. I'd say that I would struggle to kill a human child more. As in, like, my psychological ability to do it. That doesn't mean that the human child's worth more. That just means, like, I would personally struggle to do it. It's like if you were to put my mom and somebody else on a railway track, I'd choose my mom. It doesn't mean my mom's worth more. I mean, I'd argue I have a greater duty to my mom, but my mom's not worth more than somebody else's mom. But there we go. Like, I'm gonna choose my mom. It's just, it's not like it doesn't make it. It doesn't change the value. But then I would say that like, the human child has probably got. There's probably a greater argument there to be made to help the human child, one, for a functional society, two, for the psychological harm it would do their parents, and the other family members that would be left. Yeah, that would be the only real difference, I would say. The human child, I don't think, actually has any more intrinsic value. No. But thank you for your question, Michael. Thank you very much. Lewis says, supernatural beyond nature, I see no way to falsify. Yeah, I agree, Lewis. Frog, do you think that sharing so many features between the species proves proves the creator. Oh, did my camera just die? I do believe it did. 1 second, guys. I'm now having visual problems. Right. So now we're on a much worse video, and I am very sorry for that, but there is absolutely nothing that can be done about that until I essentially make more money. Yeah. Is that gonna work? Yeah. So yeah, not until I make some more money about that. But hopefully you can see is still. Oh my god, I'm massive. What the hell's going on there? Oh god, I've just went even bigger. Jesus. Sorry about that, guys. My god. I don't know if you just wanted to see my forehead that much. So yeah. Unfortunately, my camera has died, so now we're back and stuck to a webcam. I will be getting better equipment for that. But yeah, like as I was saying, I don't think that similarities between creatures proves the existence of a creator at all. Like when I say that, I mean at all. Like I don't think there is any evidence to say that that evolution wouldn't produce qualities which would evolve even separately. For example, one of the greatest examples is the eye, which we think evolved separately 7 times. Why would that evolve separately 7 times? Arguably because it's just essentially a very effective way of gaining information about one's environment, which would allow the greater success of a species. So a species with very basic and rudimentary light capturing equipment, whether it's like a little pinhole or a curved surface and so on, which allows for like literally just seeing shapes, or or just even just seeing any light at all, or then seeing shapes and so on, escalating up to the complexity of an eye, and then maybe the complexity of like an eagle's eye, going on further than the human eye. I don't think that shows a creator. I think that's like the Paley's watch argument, arguably, in which there'll be the only real argument against like trying to argue for the existence of a creator because of the complexity of our species. But pure similarity, I don't think that shows anything other than evolution's been maybe pulled. You've seen similar pull and push factors in various species, in various evolutionary trees. But thank you for your question. Very much appreciate it. O Jones, I overdosed on SSRI tablets Monday night, but I'm still here, and now I'm again listening to you. You are a soothing man who's always helped me put things into perspective. Well, I hope you're okay, Jones. Really do look after yourself. I know life can get really pretty tough. I think that really you just got to take some time and make sure you're okay. Whatever it is that's troubling you, do seek help. There are people there that will help you. And make sure you just keep yourself okay. If you find yourself needing help, there are crisis teams that you can ring, and they'll talk to you. They're usually pretty good, and they'll help you with your problems. They'll at least point you in the right direction and give you the support that you need. You might even just need someone to talk to, and I understand that. So really just take care of yourself, whatever it is that's causing you problems. Remember that, bad times pass, and it's all about having the right state of mind and trying to gain some perspective over it. Right, good luck anyway, Jones. What is it? What I do in video games, is what I do in video games morally accessible? Right. 1 second. And the music's changed to like very I mean, it's nice, but it's very distracting with all the lyrics. Yeah, that's better. Hopefully this is a bit better. Right. So, where were we, guys? Is what I do in video games morally accessible? I'd say that it depends. I mean, it's not like necessarily what you do in video games. Like, I don't think that your actions of the character, excuse me, reflect, let's say, like a moral inferiority of you. Like, so for example, if you choose to be like a dark side character in a video game, you're playing Star Wars and you're going around like killing people with a lightsaber, you're not really killing people with a lightsaber, so it's not the same thing. I do think that, you know, this whole conversation of whether video games cause violence is something to be considered. You know, like, you know, if for example you're using the video game to indulge in violence, you're using it to genuinely, you want to satisfy a craving for violence, to be violent and to do horrible things, that's separate. Then I'd say that, yeah, then you're doing something wrong. That's virtue ethical in the sense that I think that you're probably going to end up, you know, perhaps on a slippery slope. And I think that, you know, giving into that desire would ultimately cause more harm than good. On the other hand, if you're just playing a game and you can differentiate the character's violence from your violence, if you can differentiate what really is happening in the world and what's not, then I don't really think, and overall it's not affecting your emotional state, so you're likely to go and commit these acts of violence, and it's not maybe making you hardened to violence or whatever it is that you're doing in the game, then no, I don't think you're morally culpable for that, and I don't think there's any moral issue there. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I think a good example of this sort of stuff is, if you've ever watched Star Trek in the holodeck, I think that takes it to another level. It's like, okay, right, these are holographic characters that are looked to made to resemble individuals to the highest degree. So at what point do we say that the individual mightn't be able to psychologically differentiate between what is a holographic character and what is just another actual living, breathing, thinking, conscious individual? So yeah. What do you think of people named Dave? Oh, I hate Daves. Jesus. Nah, Dave's alright. Dave's a good lad. You know. Me and him have to have a conversation with some of the other PhDs soon, apparently. So I'm looking forward to that. But thank you, Shadow. Nice to have you here. With the pandemic, how many people dying are worth going back to work, reopening the economy? There must be a legitimate cost-benefit analysis. I agree. I'm not going to make one on this stream. I don't have the information, and I don't have the overall greater ramifications for everything, so it'd be nonsense for me to even try and answer that. But I do agree there has to be a cost-benefit analysis in relation to, you know, for example, increased suicide rates. You know, increase people, like, for example, not going to seek help from hospitals. The other day I heard of a person that got stabbed, I think it was in the neck, in Birmingham or something, and they called an ambulance. Of course, you know, like the person that the people on the scene called an ambulance to help this girl. And they were met with, does anyone in the group have COVID? And it's like, what, does it matter? Like, someone's been stabbed in the neck. Does you know, I was supposed to ask her, excuse me, miss, have you got COVID? It's absolutely nonsense. And don't get me wrong, I see the point of being precautious, and I do agree that the virus is real. I'm not one of these people that's like, the virus isn't real, the government's trying to trick me. I just think that asking that kind of question in that scenario is absolutely ridiculous. I think that at the same time, like the individual who got asked just went no, like, you know, just absolutely not. Like, of course I don't care. Like, he didn't ask anyone, but he just said no. And overall, like, it worked out fine. Like, I think the person got help. But like, the idea of asking that at a time in crisis, like, have you got COVID? I mean, like, the virus kills like maybe less than like 3% of the people it infects. So like, in the grand scheme of things, like, even if like anyone did have COVID, someone bleeding out is such a worse scenario than them getting COVID. It's just ridiculous. Thank you anyway for your question. Fraser, do you think there is a solution to Bradley's regress? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what Bradley's regress is. I don't think Bradley's regress. At least I don't know it off the top of my head. Bradley's regress. Oh, right, okay. Essentially the problems of reductionism. Excuse me. I'm not gonna lie, I probably could not answer that right now. I think I'll look into it and hopefully respond more coherently later on, like with greater depth. But if I try and answer that now, then you're probably going to get a half-baked response. I could give it a go, I suppose. The idea is that whether it's a bundle of qualities, such as, like, for example, lump of sugar would only be like sweetness, like in the texture and whatever it is. Ad infinitum, what is sweetness? Then you take it down until you reach the bottom. But I think in reality, if we look at it in reality, this is what's I think it's what like many continental philosophers like Blanchot, Hegel, and there's a few others actually in phenomenology describe as the infinite experience. And that's what I would say. I'd say like the reality is that the lump of sugar is actually not even a lump of sugar. It is the raw datum. It is the actual existence, the phenomena, the ontological experience. And then the problems actually occurring when we're applying language to it. And every time we're applying language to it, we're destroying qualities within it. And it seems to not actually. It seems that it's just a facsimile of the real, and that's the issue. You know, and this is, I think, what we kind of have to acknowledge, that what we experience is only a phenomenal experience. It's a perceptual one. It's not the real itself. It's not the ontological, objective reality. It's actually like a characterized, colored reality. And I think the only way that you could really, and like Hegel thinks that you can kind of overcome this by eventually maximizing, knowledge until it's a 1-to-1 ratio with reality. And in which case the infinite experience would be absolutely linguistically qualified, in which the individual would not necessarily even need language. From what Hegel's even saying, it seems like there's a point in which the individual doesn't even need subjectivity anymore, doesn't need like self-awareness, because self-awareness would be the base awareness of their being, as if like they become merged into one, where the ready to hand and present at hand become a single unified experience. So that means like the immediate present the immediate present and the higher level thought processes of the present, like thinking about what it means, like what the object is, the words that we apply to it, like how to understand reality, they would become one. So when we perceive the object, we would perceive it as it is in reality. Absolutely the case. Do I think that I know that we'll never reach that. as in like anyone in our lifetime, unless there's like an AI that just does it for us somehow. Just the absolute spirit like merges with some supercomputer. But I don't see that happening. But I hope that answer gives you a decent answer to the question. But I'll see if I can give you a better answer when I look more into the problem. But thank you very much, Fraser. Mayman, don't know if you've asked this. Don't know if you've been asked this 100 times before, but what are your thoughts on rule utilitarianism? I actually don't get asked this very much. I think rule utilitarianism is actually... it's pretty interesting, actually. I think it's pretty good. It's not for me. And I don't think it's a solid argument overall. I don't think it's like... It depends on the rule utilitarian, for one. But overall, I think utilitarianism relying purely on individual subjectivity is the issue. It's reliant upon like the rational caprice of a single agent. I think that if we say that the rules were generated between individuals and that the rules in fact were the reasoning within institutions, and those institutions, you know, create our duties, which is what I would argue, then I would say then what we'll have is rule following, and that's deontology. And that's why I would say it's threshold deontology, and that's the separation. So I'd probably say that rule utilitarianism is like the best form of utilitarianism, but ultimately still wrong. If that answers your question. But thank you very much for your question. Opinion on non-naturalism. I think that it's a lot of mental gymnastics to try and avoid moral critics a lot of the time, from what I've experienced of it. Like reading like some Parfit, I was honestly quite surprised at the emergence of theories. I think Derek Parfit seems like an incredibly intelligent guy. I think that he's very interesting. I think that reading a lot of non-naturalism is ultimately very confusing, and I feel like maybe some of it even seems like almost Neoplatonic. And I can appreciate that. I can appreciate some of that, but I don't know. Non-naturalism seems to me that a lot of mental gymnastics to avoid things like Hume's law. But thank you very much. Oh, thank you for the great audio. Thank you very much. What mic is that? It does sound good. This is a Shure SM7B, guys. Because of all the donations, I managed to get like my dream mic. And again, I can't express enough how grateful I am. Thank you everyone who donated. So yeah, so your OG hairstyle was better, not gonna lie. Which one was that? Was that like was that me like curls, or was that me shaving head? I was actually thinking that looks like a real nice recording setup. Oh, thank you very much. It really cost a lot more than I would have normally been able to afford, but because of the generosity of the people who donated, I was able to get this set up, and it's honestly, it's brilliant. Thank you very much everyone who donated. It is actually amazing. Next up is essentially a new camera. So you see the camera quality before, I'll have that even better permanently, and then I'll have a backdrop. I'm actually DIYing myself some acoustic treatment for the room, so that the audio sounds even crisper. So, you know, soon, guys, soon. Let's see. Where am I? I think I've lost my position. I have no idea who I was about to answer. Alright, sorry man. Well, if I miss your question, just drop it in the chat and I'll get back to it. Right. Should I include a donation link in the description? I actually will be, but not in this stream. This stream is coming at you for free. And in the next few streams, I will be taking donations for super chats, and I actually have a very special surprise, which I may as well get to now, like, because I've been kind of beating around the bush for it. So for everyone who donated, you'll be getting this for free. So I'm actually creating a philosophy course right now. It's going to be incredibly comprehensive, an introduction to all of the major fields of philosophy and a variety of thinkers chronologically from the classical period all the way up to the contemporaries. And I'll have quotes in there. You'll have a variety of different videos and graphics that will help, and various sources from thinkers from the primary thinkers themselves. So I'm aiming for an incredibly high quality, incredibly detailed course that will help anyone from beginner to advanced in philosophy. I want this to help anyone who's, like someone who's maybe going into A level, wanting to understand philosophy just at the start, like very beginner, to someone who is perhaps in that degree and wants to refresh their knowledge or gain some knowledge on classical thinkers, gain some, quotes, useful quotes. So hopefully I'll have that done soon, and I'll be selling that course. But anyone who donated will be getting it for free. No matter how much you give, you'll be getting it for free. I'm planning on selling that course for about £200 a pop, which I think is absolutely worth it, because I spent about £40,000 on my degree, and there's more in it than there was in my degree. So, but anyone who donated anything at all is going to get that course. So even if you are a low level donation, in the sense that you didn't give all your entire bank account, you are going to get that course. No worries. And just as my gift to you, as a thank you for helping the channel out. So as soon as that's ready, check your inboxes. And the plan is actually to give away one for free, a raffle, one for free. So if anyone's interested in that, keep watching the channel, because I will be raffling one of those courses. And managed to lose me place again. Finally started After Virtue today. Ooh, that's such a good book. I've been trying to get to it for ages. Good start. What other books on ethics do you recommend? What other books on ethics do I recommend? I recommend A Short Introduction to Hegel. I think that's a nice one. Nice, easy book for Hegel by Peter Singer. I recommend that primarily because it's easy and easy to navigate. What else? I mean, it's quite difficult for just ethics. I always read primaries. I'm terrible. I never end up reading any secondaries, and I really should, because that's how I would learn so much more and a lot quicker. Try and think of a good ethics book. I mean, Animal Liberation, absolutely. There's another one. Trying to think the ones that I actually enjoyed. A lot of them, I read Christopher Culp's. What was it? It's if you're in analytic philosophy, it's actually a brilliant book. Although he's a Neoplatonist, and his position, I feel, is just it's non-natural. Christopher Culp. I think it's Knowing Moral Truth. Knowing Moral Truth, if you're interested in a theory of metaethics and moral knowledge. So it's like epistemology and metaethics. If you're interested in that sort of thing and you're an analytic, or if you're just interested in seeing the arguments in a very well written format, very well clear, easy to understand format, then Knowing Moral Truth is pretty great. It will literally just tell you straight up most moral criticisms in metaethics. it will give you solutions to some of them, and then kind of just try and sidestep some other ones by just be like, oh, right, well, that's not a criticism to Plato, and I'm a Platonist, so it doesn't really matter. And it's like, right, okay, well, like that's not really solving it, but okay. But otherwise, I think it's a good book. It is definitely worth the read. He really tries to stress that it has real life repercussions and gives examples continuously of a school shooting, which he, describes as immoral and wants to continue describing as immoral, and so tries to make a defense for why he would say it's immoral to, kill kids in a school. But yeah, I would say that's a good one. After Virtue, obviously, Who's Justice and Which Rationality by Alistair McIntyre as well. Primary thinkers, I could recommend. I think if you're gonna get straight into the primaries, I would say that you go for the early Greeks. Gorgias, Protagoras are probably my favorite ethics-based books that Plato wrote. The Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle is brilliant. I'd 100% recommend that. What else? I keep meaning to read Aquinas myself, so I'm not gonna recommend too much on Aquinas. That's about it, really. Because if I start recommending other primaries, depending on your I don't know what your comprehension is in philosophy, like your level of philosophy, your commitment to it, and how much you're willing to give one book. But otherwise, I'd start recommending people like Kant, for example, The Groundwork for the Metaphysics of Morals. It's a great book, and it's very useful to understand Kant, and it'll give you his position in it's a tiny little book, but it's still horrible to read. So, and then obviously, if you're going for the big boys, like Hegel, if like Hegel and Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, or Pure Practical Reason, Kant's Critique of Practical Reason, they're good, don't get us wrong, but they're horrible to read. And then I'd say ultimately if you continue people like Gadamer, I think his work on Bildung and stuff it's more, I guess it's more of it's philosophical hermeneutics, but it has a great deal of ethical purport. I'm not a big fan of, the thing is that you can kind of ethics obviously is tied to politics, so I could talk about John Locke, Hobbes, people like that as well. But then I feel it's not pure ethics, so it depends on what you're kind of going for. But yeah, thanks for the question, Neo-Epicurean. Actually, saying that, you could read the Stoics and the Epicurean as well. They're pretty good. Nice introductions. I'd say Marcus Aurelius is a good one for the Stoics. Very easy to understand. More advanced Stoicism, I'd say Epictetus. And then Epicurus is probably better than all of them. Epicurus is great. But thank you very much. Actually, the camera is good. Just a webcam angle. Oh well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? Thanks there. But hopefully I'll get it fixed soon. Fingers crossed. I liked Moral Realism, a defense by Schaefer Landro. I've never read it, but I'll give it a look. Speaking alternative mental states, what are your thoughts on shrooms and LSD? I would be incredibly careful, is what I think it alters the phenomenal experience of reality, but I think that can be a negative very quickly. That can genuinely turn into something bad very quickly. From what I'm understanding, shrooms is less potent. LSD is more potent. I've never taken them myself, and I haven't looked into the studies about how safe they are. I was talking about someone in Oxford when I went down to talk to Cosmic Skeptic about this. He was just in the bar, and he was talking about this sort of stuff, and he was doing philosophy. And he was talking about I think he was doing philosophy anyway, or he just really talking about the philosophy of psychedelics. But he started talking about their overall impact on you, and the way it changes your perception and stuff like that. And it was some really interesting stuff. And he seemed to think that they were great and mind opening and stuff. I would be incredibly careful. I know a handful of people who've done them, and like I know like some that are absolutely fine, and I know some that are absolutely not. So there's things that I can't really speak from anything but experience in that respect, like from who I've interacted with and who I've seen who have taken, psychedelics. So yeah, just take care of yourself, look after yourself, do your research. I look evil sometimes. I look evil, guys. I look evil, really. Yeah. No. Hiya, Twisted Hippie. Nice to have you here. See if I can actually fix that angle a little. No, there is no fixing it. But here we are. The holodeck is so interesting and explored very well in Star Trek in The Next Generation. Yes, it is Star Trek The Next Generation, the best Star Trek. So, yeah. The music has stopped. How dare it? Right. What do you think a person who wants to pursue an academic career in philosophy should do? What are the universities looking for, and what real-world experience do they want? UK for reference. Real-world experience for philosophy. None. None. I think what they really want. I mean, if you say like the universities themselves, like the whole like make your personal statement relevant. Mine, for example, gave reference to the 2 courses I was applying for. So I was applying for 2 university courses. I got into one, Newcastle, which I'm very happy with, and that was my first choice. And it was like what I made it relevant because I essentially took the course names. So what I did was I looked at the names of the modules before I went to the university, thought of what I thought was interesting, and then checked out both of them. Now, the courses I was applying for, one had a course that was like, I can't remember if it was Newcastle, it was like Knowing Our Place in the Universe, and then I think the other one was like Metaphysics. And both of them were metaphysics, but Knowing Our Place in the Universe was the name of the course. So that was Newcastle's, I think. So what I said was like, I really want to understand our place in the universe by studying metaphysics. And that way I kind of just hit both the modules in and just made it look like I was directing it at the university, kind of getting like a personal feel with it. That was what I went for. If you're looking for real world experience in philosophy to try and bolster your position, try and like join a philosophy society. I think they'll appreciate that. They'll appreciate you trying to engage in philosophy as much as possible. The more philosophical knowledge you have, the more capable you're of like demonstrating that in a little personal statement that you have a great deal of philosophical education because of your outside interest in philosophy. You've read various primary texts, or you read secondary texts and you have a great deal of interest in philosophy. They're just going to like that. They're just going to eat that up. Yeah, I'd say that's about it. I mean, otherwise, maybe like, I would say like interest in like politics and current events. If you're interested in that sort of thing, maybe that would do good as well. But yeah, so thank you very much. And yeah, good luck. Islamic State, communism. Would I rather live in 1, Christian theocracy, 2, an Islamic State, or 3, communism? Communism. Thanks for the question. I mean, I am a socialist. I mean, if we're talking about like Stalinism, it depends what you mean by communism, because if we're talking about like Trotsky's like upper stage communism, take me there, please. Like, it's basically, it sounds incredibly like Star Trek, almost like just like, oh, well, we've just totally destroyed scarcity. Like, yeah, like, take me there. But if you mean like Stalinism and I'm like, I don't know, Nicholas the Second or something, and like actually like, you know, Lenism or whatever, and I'm Nicholas the Second, then yeah, maybe not so much. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for your question, Brundle. He's a libertarian socialist, so probably the latter. Yes. Good shout, Splatter. Splattercat Bambi. What the hell's that name, man? Bro, what leftist theory books do you recommend for beginners? I've read Marx, Engels, Reader, Lenin's big essays, and I want to move forward. Honestly, I think underrated is one of the most underrated thinkers for the left is probably someone like Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci. I found him really like quite easy to understand. And honestly, what I would start with is not even like a text. If you want to like just get a little like understanding of Gramsci, I'd say like there's a video on YouTube called by 10-Minute Philosophy, great video, called I think it's just an introduction to Gramsci's cultural hegemony. That's really good. There's another video on YouTube explaining Deleuze on this is the postscript of the Society of Control, and a nice little book to read, although he's a postmodernist and I don't agree with his metaphysics rather, is Foucault, Discipline and Punish, brilliant, and Civilization, Madness and Civilization. They're both brilliant, and they give you a historical overview of just essentially cultural norms. And I think that's one of the things that I was like kind of empty in a lot of like leftists. Like they know either a lot of postmodernism in the sense they think everything's like there is no such thing as meta narratives, you know, like, you know, that kind of shit, and or they know absolutely nothing but, you know, power structures, and maybe they don't know ethics. And I think that it's just having a well-rounded philosophical education is what I would recommend any leftist do. I think that focusing primarily, I don't know whether you do this or not, but focusing primarily on like pure leftism is probably one of the biggest problems that we'll have. And actually, more than that, actually, is just people not even reading. I really appreciate like what you've already read, because, you know, like Vosh, I mean, he runs a political philosophy channel, and I heard him like about 2 weeks ago saying that he had never read any of the theory. Like, he didn't read any political theory. He's a leftist apparently, like, you know, socialist, advocating for socialism, and yet had read no Marx or any other Marxist, no other socialist. I think that's mental. Like, I think that's absolutely insane. Like, it just seems like absolutely absurd to advocate for something that you most likely do not understand properly. It just seems like just bias. Like, you know, you like the idea, it sounds nice. You know, let's just run with it. And I think that ultimately are the people who undermine, like, you know, why I'm not a leftist anymore. And it's like, because you never read anything. Like, you're now in the right wing, but you don't know what the right's about either. You know, you're just a political like populist. But, you know, like, it's just one of those things. Read Vosh. Yeah, man. I'd say, like, actually, you know what? Yeah, if you want to be a good leftist, read Anarchy, State and Utopia by Robert Nozick. Read The Right Wing. And tell me why it's wrong, is what I would say. What's he got right and wrong? He's asking for leftist theory. Marx is hardly covered in contemporary macro. Yeah, I would say like Marx is great. Like, if you're going to read Capital, but if you're not going to read Capital, because that's a bit of a beast, I would just say like you can kind of get away if you want to understand what Marx is advocating for by reading, you know, the Communist Manifesto, which is much smaller, although way less detail. Like, just his talk about commodities and why he talks and what he means by labor, for example, in Capital is way better, and that's just at the start. But, you know, but yeah, like, I definitely go for the secondaries, but I think you already said that you had an intro to Marx. So yeah, I think Singer does a decent intro to Marx as well. So Post Keynesians. Well, the thing is, Keynes is it's leftist, but it's like that like liberalism. It's like, well, we're just gonna distribute wealth, and that's why I would say read Robert Nozick, because honestly, I think redistribution is absolutely flawed. I think that having to take money off someone else and put it somewhere else in society is a sign that society is already broken. We need to fix distribution and not redistribution. We shouldn't be trying to medicate the symptomatic issues, you know? Like, we're just putting painkillers of a society, you know? Oh, well, we know society is broke as shit. Like, so what we're going to do is just tax the rich who earn a boatload of money and then create a system, of course, that allows them to avoid the tax as much as possible. But, like, it doesn't work. And then you get, like, you know, the ideal countries, which are, like, you know, the Scandinavian countries, which have a boatload of money for their population size. And then, ultimately, everyone is being taxed out the arse. And except for the corporations, which absolutely avoid it. So then you end up with this, like, yeah, everyone's getting paid a good wage, but they're getting taxed heavily, and they've got a great welfare state, and they're happier than the terrible other economies around them. But that's not saying much. It doesn't mean that country's actually got a good model. It just means that, like, it's not as bad as this one. Like, and that's not hard, man. Like, anything's better than this for the most part. I mean, hell, like, I mean, if we could just, you know, like, there's a point in which, like the basics of trade were just a little bit better. Like, you know, if we could just have the, like, and I'm not one for bringing back the gold standard, but just anything from which to give a better perspective of our economic place. I mean, like, everything's so intangible and unreal. Like, it's just a mess, just an absolute mess. But thank you for your question. Well, your statement. Brundle, not really as an ex-Muslim. I can assure you, Islam has a lot of restrictive policies. There would stop a utopia. Yeah, I would agree. I do not think that any fundamental religion can bring around the greater good for a society. So yeah. Looking at Roderick Long, I know he's a left libertarian. Does metaphysics or ethics tell us what type of government I'm going to say that we ought to have? Well, I'd say that anything like ethics should be used to determine what politic you kind of want to apply. Okay, like, that's kind of like politics and ethics are like that, right? Like that. And if they're not like that, then there's something going wrong. So it's like when I was talking about redistribution. It's like, for example, I think redistribution is a flawed system because of ultimately the consideration of the individual. However, it's better than what we've got now. Well, not we've got, because we've got some redistribution, but, you know, would be better off with even more redistribution than allowing corporations to do what they're doing now, because of how bad that is to the individual, to society as a whole. But ultimately, this is all judged. This value judgment is based in ethics. And if it's not based in ethics, then it's just ad hoc, and it's based off an individual's caprice, like an individual's, like, selfish desires, and maybe, like, the overall, you know, corruption of the state, and or cronyism, or what I think we'll call it now. And there's this there's a definite need for ethics in any state to work out whether it's good or bad, whether we need a political change or not. Politics itself cannot determine what's good or not. It can only apply ethical theory and see whether it's coming out, like, with good money. Like, for example, is capitalism applying correctly? Well, no. Like, and why not? And whether it matters. But, like, you can have, like, a full-on oligarchy. You could have a plutocracy, and unless you've got ethics, you wouldn't be able to determine why that is right or wrong. So yeah, ethics is 100% necessary to determine which type of government we should or should not have. In fact, that question in the first place is an ethical question. So yeah, thank you for your question. And actually, just to round that off, I think that the best place to look for that is Aristotle. Like, he saw just politics as the next stage of ethics. It's just ethics, you know, expounded, and that's it. It's just how we live together, and that's how the Greeks understood it. How did I get into philosophy? How did I get into philosophy? I think it was actually, like, when I was raised a Catholic, more like first, like, started my first introduction to, like, kind of theology more than anything, and like ethics as a child. That's when I was first introduced to it. But in overall, I would say that I'd say that I probably got into philosophy when I was 16. Really, I got in a little bit before that. Like my mom would read us books like Richard Dawkins. Even though she's a Catholic, she'd read The Other Side. Richard Dawkins, the Blind Watchmaker. I was like 9. And like a few other books, theological typically. And then when I really got into it was when I was 16 and I did philosophy at A level. Like I found out that I started doing like philosophy. I started doing RE. I was actually in like a really low set in RE in school. And I mean, I was getting good grades and stuff. I don't know how I actually got into a low set. This is the thing. I went in, I didn't revise. I basically, like, I think I come out with like 1 mark off an A or something. And I was in like a really low set. I had no lessons really in RE. Like the class was absolutely crazy. I don't know if anyone's been in like bottom set of anything in school, but there is no teaching at all. The teacher's just trying to either keep the class disciplined or they just ignore them. And my teacher kind of just ignored them. He just came over and started talking to me, and he would just ask us philosophical questions which were totally unrelated to to the material that was supposed to be learning, which was like, you know, Christian theology, kind of like, you know, what is the golden rule kind of stuff. And I knew I could just go into the test and like just basically golden rule my way through it for the most part. And so essentially I would just talk philosophy with one of my teachers, and he was a really smart guy, really lovely guy, ex-priest, and honestly, I like credit to the school, and he really helped us understand what philosophy was. He just kind of introduced us just through conversation. He just asked us, like, for example, questions about God, because I was a Catholic and he was Catholic, he was an ex-priest, and we'd just talk really about theology for about an hour, and it was really lovely overall. I had no bearing on my ability to do the test I was going to take for that GCSE, but I think he just assumed that I was going to do okay anyway. So, and the rest of the class were just going absolutely crazy. I mean, it was nowhere near the craziest class I was in. Like, I did engineering, and all the people in engineering, like I think it was like one lesson where there was like 5 stink bombs or something went off, and it was just awful. Like someone standing on the desk just like screaming at the teacher, and this is in the same lesson. Like this, absolutely crazy, man. I've never seen anything like it in my life. But yeah, like the times, like, you know. But yeah, I'd say about 16, like 15, 16 is when I first started getting into philosophy, like that lesson. And then later I did A level. What was it? If the problem with animal products is that they suffer, could we then consume animal products if we breed out the capacity for the animal to experience suffering? Just explain to me how you're going to breed out subjectivity. And just explain like how you plan to breed out like any conscious interests within an agent. I don't think that's possible. I mean, like if you can breed an animal that's unconscious, like it's never actually consciously aware. Let's say it doesn't have a brain or something. I don't know how you managed to breed that in. Or you genetically engineer it or something like that. There's no conscious awareness. There's no pain being felt by an individual, and they have no interest in pleasure at all. Then do I care if you eat it? No. It's the same as a cell culture, isn't it? Really, that's all you've done. You've got a cell culture in the shape of an animal. So yeah, if that answers your question. But no, I don't think you can breed it out. Like, I think that's kind of ridiculous. But yeah. It's not that just that the suffer, it's that they have any interests in general. So it's not just that like suffering is part of it, but they also have, you know, the capacity for feeling good things. And overall the desire for the good things, which is important. Thank you for your question. Waximus. I'm Waximus Awilius Wesimus. Thank you. What would you say to people like that you like who say that philosophy is unnecessary, overrated? Insert philosophy cliche here. I would probably say, right, why do you think it's overrated? And then when they try and, tell us why, I just say, oh, you're doing philosophy. And then maybe just explain to them that philosophy is where we gain an understanding of like overall reality. It allows us to question our positions, and without philosophy, we would not be able to gain objectivity and a non-biased approach to reality. And if it wasn't for that approach, we would have, and if it wasn't for philosophy and the way it's developed, I would argue that we wouldn't have had the ethical progressions we've had. That the people who've done philosophy and people who've engaged in ethics in that everyday life are engaging in a practical philosophy. And when the see around them that value structures aren't adding up, that like there's oppression or there's exploitation, and they wish that to stop, and they construct arguments as to why that's not justified, and they can see the unjustification in reality, that's philosophy. And I don't think any of us would think that like people like Martin Luther King, who are heavily engaged in philosophy in that respect, were anything but essential. So yeah. Thoughts on the Rawls-Nozick debate? But thank you for your question, by the way, Capone. Thoughts on the Rawls-Nozick debate? I think Rawls gets slapped all over by Nozick, if I'm honest. That's why I was recommending him before. I mean, I'm not a fan of liberalism, for one. I think that McIntyre also destroys Rawls' position on, like his idea of, the original position. I think the original position is essentially just liberal reasoning, which comes to liberal conclusions, and ultimately is just a position which justifies a, pleasure-pain ratio, which is why, or like risk-reward ratio rather, which is why Nozick kind of points out, it depends on the individual, man. You're just assuming that everyone's going to go for the lowest risk, and they might not. Like, people don't do that necessarily. And that's one of the biggest things about capitalists. Like, a lot of the people who do try and make as much money as possible, they take extreme risks, and a lot of them arguably could be like psychopaths, which are much more likely to take risks. So yeah, no, I think Rawls gets slapped all over. I think Rawls absolutely loses the debate. Can I eat oysters ethically for health benefits as a vegan? Well, I wouldn't eat oysters for health benefits anyway. Like, I don't see any real benefits. You're just increasing your levels of mercury and stuff. Just pollutants. I'd say and ultimately, I don't think you can eat oysters as a vegan, because the collection of oysters normally requires the use of fishing nets, which also increases bykill. And bykill is although intention is not there, I understand that it's the same as crop deaths. Bykill is way worse. It's not like a crop death where per so many kilograms you kill so many animals and it was unavoidable. Bykill's way higher. It's tons. It's 3 times as many animals are killed as bykill than they are for the catch itself, from what I'm aware. So yeah, I wouldn't say so. Do I think oysters themselves are sentient? I always err on caution. Anyway, I don't think they've got brains and the neurological complexity for it. But I haven't seen any real information on it that kind of gives us a solid conclusion. So I'd kind of just err on caution. But ultimately, I would say that it's probably it's probably likely that they're not sentient. And if you you weren't if you were to come across an oyster and it on a beach or something, it's not the same as chasing an animal down and slitting its throat because of that kind of moral ambiguity. But I'd always say err on caution, avoid oysters. So yeah. Right. Do you need to research meta-ethics before studying normative ethics? I think that in reality, ethics shouldn't be tied into these 3 sort of kind of non-related fields, arguably. I think people what's he called? Mackey try to say that meta-ethics is irrelevant to normative ethics, right? Tries to say that you don't need meta-ethics to have a normative theory that works and functions properly. I think Mackie hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. And I've heard other philosophers say that as well, because I think to have understandings of the word good, bad, right and wrong, beyond just an intuition, then you're going to need to read metaethics. So yeah, I would say metaethics is essential to understand normative ethics. But I mean, if you want to understand normative theories as itself, like you can understand the theories themselves. But if you want to understand ethics, like actually understand ethics, you need to read metaethics, normative ethics, and practical ethics. In which case is why I say Continental is pretty great, because it's normally not split up. It's like one thing. You read like Hegel, you read Kant. They're not separating the fields. They're doing one. They're doing one. And I mean, the classical thinkers in general kind of do that. Like they don't really separate like metaethics. We're doing metaethics here. We're doing practical ethics here, and makes for a longer read. But I think it's ultimately better, honestly. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. One second. Sorry about that. I was helping me dog. Right. Thoughts on egoism? I feel like it's just meme philosophy. No, I don't think egoism's meme philosophy, man. Like, not at all. Like, I think egoism is probably, I mean, I'd consider egoism. I think subjectivism is meme philosophy. If you're a subjectivist, typically, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's just a way for people to go, well, everything's subjective, man. Like, God, I heard, like, oh my God, you must believe in, like, some sort of creator or something. And it's just like, right, okay, so you've read absolutely no philosophy. Great. You do get, like, good, like, anti-real, you gotta be, like, Nietzscheans and stuff who, like, read, like, Nietzsche. They're all right. Most Nietzscheans, again, typically like, oh, you've not read the genealogy, and it's just like, oh God. But at the same time, like, it's kind of meme philosophy. I think the big one really is don't get me wrong, I think the genealogy and I think Nietzsche's class, I think it's really essential to understand, like, the impact that traditions had upon what ethical authorities. And I think that's what Nietzsche does, like, with the genealogy. It really undermines how he shows, like, for example, how the overall power system has affected our construction of ethics, and I think that's essential. But, like, when people actually argue for like Nietzsche's positive philosophy, you just start thinking, like, are you absolutely out of your mind? Like, like, they're talking about the will to power and, like, basically being like a predatory animal. Like, they start talking about being like the eagles and the sheep, and you just like, you're crazy, man. You're actually crazy. Like, but I mean, like, that's not the argument I would use against them. Like, ultimately, like, you've got to give an argument against Nietzsche, and he's not an easy person to argue against because his negative position is strong. Like, that's why he's such an impressive thinker. But his positive position is, like, doesn't really fit with his negative position. Like, his negative moral anti-realist position doesn't then lead you to the kind of brand of egoism that he kind of gives you. It's like somewhat like primalism. And then I'd say that, like, egoism itself, subjectivism is typically just half-baked. Usually, I see people who are subjectivists as either not very well read or basically just have only read, like, the earliest 20th century kind of philosophers. I see a lot of them, like, I don't really see very much, like, well, early 21st century even. But, like, there's not very much there. It's like 100-year-old philosophy, the 20th century, yeah, the early 20th century, that's where it is. It's, like, not very good. I don't see very much. I mean, like, people like David Hume, I see people, like, argue for, like, David Hume's position. And if if you're a moral anti-realist and you're arguing, like, if you're a Humean, I have more respect for you, because I feel like he he actually had arguments. But even he like kind of didn't even like necessarily agree that with the idea of morals being, I think, subjective. I don't think he actually agreed with that position at all, from what I'm aware. So like there's but I like, I don't know, I think it's the memest position anyway, because it's typically like, I think the worst is actually like, you know, this whole group like, what are your axioms? We're just gonna make up our foundations for philosophy out of nowhere. Like, just pick it from the sky. And apparently that's like absolutely okay in philosophy, even though that's like the cardinal sin of philosophy. It was we just make things up. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that is actual meme. Like, no, you're not doing philosophy. You're a joke. Jay Dyer, I think, is a good example. He hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. Just trying to... My axioms... I don't know if Ask Yourself still does it. I don't know who else is out there that still like have this axiomatic kind of grounding. They just make up what the hell they want. But I think egoism is pretty good. I think egoism is not right, but is a form of moral objectivism, and its metaethical grounding is considerably better than subjectivism. I think egoism lends itself to forms of naturalism, which correspond arguably to like social Darwinism and stuff. So you get like Hobbes. People like Hobbes, I think, are not meme philosophers. They're brilliant philosophers. Like Thomas Hobbes is an incredible person to read. He's just wrong. Arguably, that's what I would argue. I think that people like John Locke, who are arguing for a social contract theory, but ultimately kind of egoistically, like it's for the benefit of you, or it's not a bad position. It is. It's wrong. It's just not the worst position. It's not a meme position. I think these thinkers are valuable. Ayn Rand, kind of a meme. Ayn Rand's metaethics, actually pretty good. Like, if you read The Virtue of Selfishness, that's actually not so bad. I actually quite like that. But Ayn Rand's political philosophy? Oh, that's a meme. That's a meme. That's just actually such a meme that you can make a game out of it called BioShock. And hit the nail on the head. Actually, I think the BioShock is probably one of the best representations of Rand's philosophy to date. It's probably better than Atlas Shrugged. What do I think of China's brand of communism, wherever that went? I think someone said, am I going to debate Vosh? I'm not going to debate Vosh because he won't debate me. Sorry, Waximus, but he keeps backing out. So, well, he doesn't even acknowledge us, actually. But thank you. What do I think of China's brand of communism? Broadly, I think China has married capitalism and communism in this capitalism and totalitarianism. I don't even think calling it communism is even justified. It's fascism. It's not communism. It's fascism. It's not even Stalinism. It's fascism, right? Because like people are ultimately living in a free market economy, under a capitalist mechanism that is controlled totally by the state, but has been incredibly influenced by free market economics, and arguably power structures like HSBC and stuff have now got incredible sway over it. So all you're seeing is like, it's just capitalism with a totalitarian government. It's just fascism. It's just fascism, man. And that's all it is. It's a free market economy used to justify the nation's power structure, which is ultimately governed by a totalitarian state. Like, it's basically like it's like fascism 101. Like, it's the fascist, like, it's a fascist dream. It's like the fascism done better than any other fascist. Like, I mean, better in the sense more successfully. Obviously, it's appalling, morally repugnant. For how they treat their citizens, how they ultimately undermine the liberties of the other people within the state, and I think ultimately, like, the betraying the socialist roots that Maoism and so on that was based on. But like Mao, obviously, not a good guy, and I think that ultimately, if that government were to engage with some philosophy on communism, like, as you say, even other types of communism that were like totalitarian, I think they'd even question they'd at least question that free market capitalism. I think they've got to. Yeah, thank you. Are there any other right-wing theory you like? Maybe something that's informal and correctly describes the world but advocates for wrong things. No, I don't think so. Not off the top of my head. Sorry, Mayman. What is RE? RE is religious education. Sorry for anyone I got confused off that. RC says, how are you? Also, how's the academics going? The academics are going okay. I'm pretty good, and I'm much better with this new mic. I'm really enjoying it. Like, I hope the audio quality is coming in really nice. Probably gonna start making like this in like a podcast, like available podcasts and stuff. So if anyone wants to listen to them, like on like iTunes and stuff, I'll make it like available so that like people can pick up these things later on. Because I feel like that this kind of audio, you've got to have that. You've got to have that like just pure audio experience. Animals without pain, so plants basically. Yeah, exactly. That's essentially what I think with good fatigue. I think that's exactly right. All animals experience pain unless they have a nerve damage or something. Yeah, be vegan. You have no biological need to eat animal products. Human. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look at it like this, right? Like eating like animal products in general typically shortens your lifespan. So like even if like you didn't have a moral imperative to like not harm animals, let's say you did create these like cell culture meat. Let's say it was pure cell culture meat from a permaculture, had no ethical ramifications. It's still bad for you, and it's ultimately going to undermine your health, which is of moral consideration there, like of ethical consideration. So yeah. We don't know if the brain and nervous system is the only way to experience and have the subjectivity. Maximus, I agree, I guess, but I mean, like, I think it's a reasonable assumption to say that neurological complexity is necessary, usually from what we've observed, for any form of behaviorism, even. So, the only two real models available, I think, to show whether that what we treat as being conscious or not is behaviorism and materialism. I think that we're kind of forced into behaviorism, and I don't think there's a way out. And I think it's like behaviorism in the sense that if anything can just show itself to be conscious in a likewise way, I think we're kind of forced to acknowledge that. Unless we have severe reason to doubt that, for example, it's a computer simulation, like something where there's no reason to believe that there's anything conscious behind it. And in fact, we can look into it and see there is definitely no possibility of consciousness there. Which leads us to, I think, materialism, where it's like this combination of behaviorism and materialism is probably kind of like where you end up. I don't think there's anything that's kind of really gonna kind of supersede that stuff. Yeah. Get some nice chill beats. Rightio guys, where was I? Vegan literally, I like vegan literally means eat vegetables. Literally vegan means nothing that includes intentional exploitation of animals as far as possible. That includes a diet. It also includes not going to the zoo and not having horse races and dog fights. Yeah, it's like a lifestyle as well. Is there a way around the Izzard gap? Well, you should ask Neo Epicurean because he's the one reading McIntyre at the minute, and I'd say McIntyre gives you the best kind of argument for how to get around it. The functional concept of man. You can find it in After Virtue in the first few chapters. Essentially, it's Hume's law is that you cannot derive an ought from an is, because there is an is does not include any it's not this it does not functionally entail an ought statement. So if you were to say like something is blue, therefore you should like it, that doesn't make any sense. Like there is no reason to come to that conclusion. But if you were to say that there's a functional concept, it implies that there is an intrinsic ought within an object. There is a telos, for example, within the object of an animal or man or whatever it is. And if that telos exists internally, intrinsically within the object, then you aren't deriving an ought from an is, you're deriving an ought from an ought. There is an intrinsic ought within there. I think Rationality Rules actually said it really nicely when he said there is, it's axiomatic oughts. It's like an ontologically, I wouldn't say axiomatic, I'd probably say ontologically, an ontological ought, And that's what I think Alistair McIntyre means by the functional concept of man, which overcomes Hume's law. Another possible solutions to Hume's law, although I'm not convinced by them, are I think I use them because let's try some. Yeah, okay. So what I would use is I sometimes use it just as descriptions is what are they called? Thick moral concepts. So thick moral concepts proposed by Philippa Foot are some of the ways that people try to overcome the is-ought divide, because a thick moral concept it entails having something is rude because of the social norms around it. For it to be rude, it has an ought that you ought not to be rude within it. But ultimately, to not be rude, you must do X, right? And the idea is ultimately it kind of leads back to this grounding problem, right? Because being a thick moral concept is kind of based on this notion of what is, right and wrong in the first place. And so it's kind of just it's kind of ad hoc, arguably. I'm talking about this in my PhD. It's it doesn't really overcome the problem. It just acts like it does. It's semantically roundabouts the problem. We're just going to pretend the problem's not there. And all it's really doing is pointing to the language and the culture, saying it's self-justified, and ultimately doesn't work. But thank you. Thank you for that wicked fatigue. I thought most of social science were subjective or at least relativistic. No mention of the frame of reference in physics and the phenomenon of superposition in quantum theory. I would say there's no such thing as a social science. I think that alone is just a pretty much an oxymoron. I think that it's epistemically impossible for psychology, sociology, economics to be a science. It's epistemologically impossible. Now, that doesn't mean it's the only way to see if something is true or not. You don't necessarily need science, something to be a science. Ethics doesn't have to be a science for it to be true or not. It needs to be logically, rationally grounded. And it doesn't need to predict human behavior. And I think a lot of the things is that, ethics, for example, I wouldn't call it a social science anyway, or a description of human behavior. It is the prescription of human behavior. And I think a lot of people have brought morality into this kind of descriptivist framework where it describes what people are doing and why. It describes what is good in relation to what we should perceive as good. When in reality, it's actually what we ought and ought not to be doing. It's about our behaviors and how we go on to act in the world. And ultimately, I'd say that you can make rational arguments for that. Do I think that you see, when you talk about relativistic, that doesn't even necessarily entail that something is not objective anyway. Something can be objective and relative. So something what someone is justified in doing if they are, for example, born 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece is very different from what they are justified in doing here, because of their knowledge from and what is the true justified belief of their time, what they see as being justified and can perceive and conceptually understand, is inherently different to someone conceptually now. And that doesn't mean that they haven't got the same ontological objective basis. It just means that knowledge as a ratio, 1-to-1 ratio, hasn't actually occurred yet. They have knowledge which is inadequate to answer the question as well as we do. It's like you wouldn't say that like someone in ancient Greece who was an atomist was wrong for being an atomist. It's a position that was pretty good for the time, but physically it's really terrible now. Like just as Newtonian physics has been overcome by relativistic physics and then quantum mechanics, you see that these positions are simply answering questions better, like giving more prescriptive power within reality, allowing us to basically see reality with a way that allows us to describe it to a greater degree. And it's the same with ethics. It allows us to understand the behaviors which will ultimately create the greatest overall benefit, the greatest overall outcome. And that's not something that is intrinsically available to it, and it's not something that we're necessarily going to agree on. And for it to be relative is not a problem, as long as it's logically grounded. And I think Aristotle kind of talks about this in some respects. Like he talks about the varying goods of societies, for example. Even back then, like Persia has different morals to Greece, and he says fire burns in Persia as it does in Greece. The ontological foundation for Aristotle is the functional concept of man. It is man, like humanity. Maybe not the functional concept of man, because that's McIntyre, who's an Aristotelian, but it's man and human nature. And that's essentially what I would say. I'd say that it's ontologically objective, that nature provides what is right and wrong. Nature provides what's good and bad, and each society describes how they should behave as right and wrong to a greater overall degree against that ontological objectivity. Whether they describe it good or not, or to what degree, is dependent upon the concepts that are available to them, which makes it relativistic. It doesn't mean that it's not objective, and it doesn't mean that there's not a standard that is judging the culture itself. Like the culture is better or worse against how well it describes nature. So it's relativistic, but it's objective. So yeah. Thank you for your question there. Or your statement. Secret weapon. Waximus. Cosmic Skeptic is a subjectivist. Not anymore. He's an objectivist now. Because I made a video criticizing him for that, and he actually basically replied like, that was my views, that he hadn't described his views for a while, and he's actually, I think he calls himself a psychological egoist. So yeah. Secret Weapon says subjectivism reduces down to psychology. I disagree. I think subjectivism reduces down to absurdity. Egoism reduces down to psychology, maybe. Yeah. Subjectivism, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's just wrong. If subjectivism, like for example, if moral anti-realism is true, nihilism is true. Subjectivism is not a thing. Like what we are describing as ethics is just a language game being played. It's nothing. It's absolutely, like what we call morality doesn't exist. So subjectivism is wrong. It's just wrong. Like if anyone can give me a good argument for subjectivism, I haven't seen one yet. I've read a tiny bit of philosophy. I've never seen a good argument for subjectivism, which is why I think it's a meme. If I can see a good argument for subjectivism, then I'll take me words back. Thoughts on Ludwig Wittgenstein? Pretty good guy in terms of his philosophy. Philosophical Investigations way better than Tractatus. Tractatus still useful though. It's got some real gold in it, like when he talks about how the way we think is logic itself. I think the Philosophical Investigations really does allow us to understand the impact of language upon how we conceptualize the world. I don't think that he's actually as original as people make him out to be. I think Hegel makes points like that. Of course I do. And I think other philosophers in continental tradition have also made, like in terms of phenomenology, have made points like essentially about that, like about how the way in which we conceive of reality is essentially both communal and based on the conceptualization of reality. So I don't think he's actually that as essentially as profound as people make him. Maybe for the analytics he was, I think, like massively. And I think for his time he was going against the norm, and I really respect him for that. But I think he was heavily influenced by other continental philosophers that he was. I think he was reading Nietzsche, and I think he read some Hegel. I think he said that the difference between him and Hegel was that Hegel wanted to say everything was one thing, everything was the same, and that what he wanted to say was everything was different. So, like, the guy was clearly influenced by a lot of the phenomenologists. Thank you. There we go. And I think that he's got some great work. I think he's very interesting, really interesting philosopher, and I think he's incredibly useful. I think people who are taking his philosophy and going a step further are people like Robert Brandom, Spirit of Trust, for example, or his talk on Sellers and what he calls inferentialism. Is brilliant, and I would recommend that, definitely. So yeah. Aved, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce that name, so I'm just not going to say it. Hey, I'm a capitalist looking for some leftist reads. What book should I start with? What book should you start with as a leftist, for a leftist philosophy? Oh, it depends on what you would take leftist to be. I would say, like, can I say Das Kapital? Is that too much? I'm actually not sure. Has anyone got any suggestions for the guy? What you'd say is like the best leftist read to start off with? Because like my introduction was like through lectures and stuff, which I think made things a lot easier in terms of like philosophy wise. Because I think like a lot of it, because I'm not again the best for secondary literature. Maybe like a short introduction to Marx, like, or something like that, I think would be pretty good. So thank you. And if anyone in the chat wants to maybe link them some books that you think would be a good introduction to leftism. How do I overcome subjective idealism? Honestly, I think that the main problem with subjective idealism is kind of inherently short. Like, I think it depends. Like, I think Wittgenstein, arguably, because I think that what he leads to is cultural relativism. Like the phenomenal experience of reality, it has to be like a culturally relative phenomena. So subjectivism could not produce the ideal. And then I would say that like people like Robert Brandom overcome that issue as well. That the application of language to reality, which gives you the deterministic objects of what are the phenomena, imply the existence of an ontological reality. So yeah, I hope that helps. Hibiscus. When will you get your PhD? I will get it in 3 years, so 2023. Hopefully. Anyway. Thank you, Twisted, for linking the Discord. Capone, months ago, I talked shit about you in your YouTube comments. I'm really sorry. Just hadn't spent time on your videos and actually learned what you talk about. You're amazing. Thanks so much. Oh, thank you, Capone. I really appreciate that. Thanks, man. No harm done, man. Like, anyone wants to talk shit, they can. Like, you know. I do mess up sometimes as well, you know, so. You have mentioned in previous video about Vosh and veganism. Oh god, where the hell's that gone? You mentioned a previous video about Vosh and veganism, a Deleuzian hellscape. When talking about free choices, could you explain this? So what I was talking about is essentially identity within capitalism. A Deleuzian hellscape is essentially a world in which our identity would be given to us, and we have no real freedom in that because all we have is a choice between 1, 2, and 3, right? So like, if you've actually, there's a great book. 1 second. There's a great book. Oh, right. Michael Crawford, Why Office Work is Bad for You, and why you should, what the good of working with your hands and why office work is bad for you. I think it's called. Michael Crawford. And he talks about essentially the existential propaganda promoted by, advertising agencies like, have an amazing experience, like, experience freedom itself by buying this new bike, which you can get like 5 different spoilers for or something, right? Like, I don't know if bikes have spoilers actually, right? But the 5 different, like, I'm going full on Zizek, like, now, like, talk about capitalism, and only I've suddenly got an itchy nose. But essentially, different choices that you're presented with when buying a bike are all like, red, orange, blue, yellow, whatever, and that's your idea of freedom. Okay, with like Deleuze, it goes even further. It's like your desire to have something, your desire, your understanding of reality, your hopes, your dreams, your everything, if they are allowed to be constructed by the capitalist class, by the norms and conventions of society, which are in the hands of the powerful, then we have essentially no free choice, because your choices are actually the result of a power system which preceded your birth, or exists, or was around in your development and continues to persist around the time you're trying to make choices, and gives you the illusion of freedom in this respect, which is why I said it's a hellscape, right? I think that Deleuze is a postmodernist, so it's different for him, but I would say that ultimately, 1 second there. Ultimately, sorry, my dog's a little terror, but ultimately, he this idea of free choice is essentially taken from it because we're presented with an identity. He thinks that this is, I think from what I understand, is unavoidable, and since the norms and conventions of our society are essentially never ontologically grounded. See, what I would say is that, and he sees it as like, okay, yeah, we should get rid of this capitalist agenda for whatever reason, but ultimately the identity itself is never grounded in anything real. Like, we can never have any there's no such thing as a good or bad identity in this respect. But I think that there is, and I think that the way that we behave in the world and the understanding of self actually correspond with reality is essentially the goal of ethics. Like Hegel, there is only the self, knowing the self. And the way that needs to be grounded is with ethics. Like, we need to truly ground what is our value judgments, like what we intend, what is actually valuable to us and why, and how we intend to achieve that. And we are how we behave in that respect. We need to stop, prescribing, notions of essence. I think Sartre shows that like really well. That we need to stop looking at why we, stop trying to essentially behave within societal norms for the sake of the norm themselves. And we need to instead understand whether the traditions are justified or not, whether the market is giving us good choices or not, and whether the choices in the market are good or not. And we shouldn't just do what Sartre says and basically reject all of those power structures. What we need to do is use what Gadamer calls Bildung. So Bildung is essentially the method for working out whether something is good or bad or not in terms of tradition. You can have a good tradition, you can have a bad tradition. Just because it's a tradition and it has an authority over individuals doesn't necessarily make it bad. And it's the same with the market. Is the market advocating something which is good or bad? Is this choice better or worse than the other choices I could make? And that's why I was criticizing Bosch, because veganism mightn't be like ultimately the best scenario when it comes to like vegan options in capitalism. Like, there will still be exploitation of workforces. There'll still be, consumerist there'll still be consumerism. There'll still be exploitations of the consumer. But ultimately, it's better than the alternatives, and it being better makes it the moral obligation. Hopefully we can overcome capitalism eventually and have a vegan society. This kind of utopian scenario where we are able to have remove exploitation of the worker as well as exploitation of animals. But right now, what we can do within capitalism is utilize our power to create a more fair and just environment, and we should do so. And it's funny that Vosch and others like him argue, no moral consumption under capitalism, when they've totally bastardized what that meant. What no moral consumption under capitalism was meant to show is that capitalism is divorcing us from our moral capacities to a certain degree. It's not saying that there is no ability to act morally under capitalism, and that all choices are exactly the same. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how exploited you are in a job, it's all the same as long as we're capitalistic. And that's absolutely not true. Like, I would absolutely condemn someone who uses slave labor over someone who pays someone minimum wage. I could condemn even our society, not like condemn, let's say, China's approach to treating its labor force to the way our society treats its labor force. It's worse, and it's worse because of the value of individuals, which we are trying to respect within socialism. And it's the same with our market choices. We can have an impact with our market choices, and we should utilize the power that we have to create a better state, and we have an obligation to do so. So when I say Deleuzean hellscape, I mean that, like, Deleuze believes essentially that what identity is given to us, that what choices are the result of marketing push and pull factors, and ultimately what we think we're doing is kind of just going to end up benefiting the capitalist class whilst or the powerful. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that we can utilize our moral authority within the market environment to create the best overall market under capitalism. And then when we hit that kind of crucial deadlock with capitalism, then we'll start seeing people advocating for real change. But until we even hit that, until we even reach the point in which what ethics is contradicting the capitalist scenario, which they haven't totally yet. I mean, they have in some places, but not in all. Then we're not really going to be advocating for the change that we need. We're not even going to understand how we ought to be free, like how we ought to be behaving. And we won't have the maturity to use the freedom if we overcome capitalism anyway. We'll just perpetuate greed. We'll just create the scenarios where we'll create hierarchies that are unjustified within the new system anyway. So there needs to be moral agency to ever really, and the ability for identity and self understanding for to ever gain any real freedom. So that's kind of me point, if that helps you understand. Jacob. Create a better world by living vegan. Couldn't have said it better myself, Lewis. Tarek says, got a new mic. Yes, I did. Doesn't it sound lovely? Yeah, and thank you to everyone who donated to help me get this mic. As I said, anyone who donated will be getting my new course that I am currently creating. So I'm creating a philosophy course, which is going to be incredibly comprehensive. It is going to take you from the ancient Greeks and the pre-Socratics all the way up to contemporary philosophers in every major field. So everyone who donated will be getting that £200 course for free as a gift from me to just say thank you for being so generous. I think you're talking about first and second moral statements. I probably was moral order statements. I'm not sure when I did that, but I probably was. Sounds like me. John Crick says, can antinatalism be considered the highest form of altruism? No. Because one, I think antinatalism ultimately is, well, one, I would say ultimately it relies upon a logical argument that there can be no justified procreation, which I'm unconvinced by. But, and I don't get me wrong, I think most procreation is probably unjustified, but like the argument that it can never be justified is separate. Is it the highest form of altruism? Well, I think if it was true that all life was like leading to inevitable, unjustified suffering, then yeah, it would probably be it'd be the ethical choice. I want to say altruistic because like altruism implies something that I think is unjustified itself. But if we take altruism to be, I think in its what it's meant to be taken as like a mutual advantage, like not just like a consideration of the other, but also yourself, then yeah, I think it'd be the most ethical position if it were true. But I don't think it is. One thumb down on this video. Ask yourself, must have dropped by and gotten triggered. I don't know, man. Me and Ask yourself are being on pretty good terms. I just hope he's not that whole polyaxiomatic thing anymore. That's the only thing I can say. But we've been pretty good terms recently. So, yeah. Nietzsche, postmodernists make a good argument for subjectivism. No, they don't. I mean, I've read like Leopold and stuff. I don't think postmodernists make a good argument for objectivism at all. Well, they rely upon like for example, I think Leopold talks about. Is it Leopold? I think it's Leopold. Talks about like aestheticism overtaking moralism. Honestly, I think to be entirely honest with you, the judgments themselves become they don't actually. There's no real good argument there. It's not like. It's nothing but absurdism anyway. It's just aesthetic idealism. That's all it is. And then when you have aesthetic idealism, it's an unjustified like value judgment that is prescribing upon an individual and arguing that it is justified in itself. It's absolutely absurd. It's just there's nothing in it that gives a justification. There is no solid grounding for subjectivism. So yeah. Anti-Enlightenment thinkers in general. Well, I think most of the anti-Enlightenment thinkers in general are usually terrible. At least in my experience. I think that they've got some decent criticisms based off Nietzsche and so on. Like people that criticize the Enlightenment at the end. But ultimately, I don't think they give a good argument for subjectivism. And I don't think that, I think subjectivism being a meta-narrative, arguably, it kind of destroys itself. I think like it leads to absurdism. Like I can say that, like postmodernism, which is why Nietzsche was so scared of the threat of nihilism. But like subjectivism doesn't overcome the threat of nihilism at all. And then, like even at all, not even close, not even close. One argument in say what 5 times quickly. I'm not actually sure. One argument in favor of subjectivism is the location problem. Where exactly are morals located, and they can never be measured as a single metric. Intransivity and incommensurability of value. I mean, that's actually not an argument. I mean, it's an argument for like. I mean, that sounds like pretty much like Moore's open-ended argument. Where's the ontological like foundation for good? Ultimately, I think it's wrong. I don't think it's a good argument that well. I think McIntyre even talks about how terrible Moore is, which I thought was a bit harsh, but he really rips into him and just it really just takes him apart, to be honest. But I think ultimately it's pretty bad philosophy done about 100 years ago, and that's what people are doing when they're subjectivists. So yeah, it's a meme. But do I think that do I think that they can be measured by a single metric? Yeah, I absolutely do. I think there can be an objective standard. I'd say that arguably there is an objective standard for right and wrong. I think that asking people what it is not the same as providing a logical argument for what it is and then arguing backwards and forwards. I think when we talk about like if we talk about what's it called, like the open-ended argument or arguments like it, which talk about the grounding of ethics. A lot of the time, like asking an individual what their values are is like one of the worst ways to gauge whether something is or is not the way it is. Like asking someone like the nature of reality fundamentally, metaphysically. Well, just because they believe something, you might ask like 5 people and they might be like, well, God created the earth. Like, yeah, right. Well, all 5 of them believe that God created the earth. Does that make it true? Not necessarily. Like, or they might believe otherwise. Like, there could be 5 atheists. Does that make it true? Not otherwise. So, like, we wouldn't use this for any other field. We wouldn't use it for, like, what do you think happened in the past? For example, like, historically, what happened in the Battle of 1066? And then, like, 5 people might give one answer, and there might be one right answer among the 5, or they could all be wrong. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what they think. I care about what the arguments show. Like, where's the evidence? Where's the proofs? And that's kind of what I care about. But yeah, thank you for that. Can you elaborate more on why you think moral anti-realism and nihilism is a meme? You said Nietzsche is a moral anti-realist. His arguments are strong, so I'm confused. Well, no, I think Nietzsche's arguments are strong. Like, I don't think Nietzsche himself is a meme. I was trying to say, like, Nietzsche's negative arguments are not a meme. Like, if you read the genealogy, or if you read, like, you know, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, or, you know, like, All Too Human, or whatever it may be, and or like The Birth of Tragedy. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that The Birth of Tragedy was not an absolutely brilliant piece of work, because The Birth of Tragedy is an excellent piece of work. And I think Nietzsche's description of the necessary need for Apollyon and Dionysian values is brilliant. It's actually really interesting. And I think there's much we can learn from Nietzsche. When we look at something like Nietzsche's positive arguments of like how we should and should not live, then I think just there's no justification with it really in Nietzsche. He just talks about this kind of like, he's just trying to overcome the threat of nihilism, and then he goes to this kind of like primal sort of egoism where he like relates it to our base nature as a way to overcome the aesthetic ideal, and it just ends up as like a meme, because you end up like this. Well, Nietzsche lost his mind, man, and like people like Jung argue that that's because of his philosophy, because his overemphasis of the Dionysian values, which he himself argued had to be balanced with the Apollyon. And I think that's kind of what happened. I think Nietzsche is great. I think he's wrong. I think his positive arguments are terrible. I think his arguments against other philosophers are brilliant, usually. Good critic, bad philosopher. You know, good skeptic, bad philosopher in that respect, which is not surprising. Like, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to be a skeptic, and I think that he also had an incredibly hard job to do. Like, I mean, like, the guy was incredibly inspired by Schopenhauer for one, which doesn't help, and then I think ultimately what he had at his like kind of disposal, I mean, I think that if he had have maybe engaged with like, I can't say, I mean, I'm just talking ifs and ands, you know, like what ifs, you know. But I think that if Nietzsche would have been able to overcome nihilism a lot better if he had have understood that there was a foundation genealogically for morality that was separate, arguably, from the power structures that the power structures themselves had hijacked. Which is more like Marx's critique of Hegel, you know, like when you look into it, like Marx is critiquing Hegel and he's saying like, you know, right, like all of these power structures are really taking the absolute piss out of her, and they're making morals which are essentially just the benefit of the ruling class. This is exactly what Nietzsche was saying, but I don't think Marx argued that there was no ontological foundation for those morals. The opposite, in fact. So yeah. When I think that, like, when I talk about subjectivists and them being memes, like subjectivism being memes, I do mean mostly postmodernists. I think postmodernism in general, like metaphysically, is terrible. I think that it's epistemologically usually terrible. It's usually just quite terrible. I think it's a response of like just strong negative arguments and no real positive affirmation on the other side. Like, they haven't read any good positive philosophers. I think that I'd recommend most people who've, like, you know, who are postmodernists to go and read, like, you know, people like McIntyre, as I say. Like, I think they make a great position for why, and ground that positions really well. And I think ultimately it's far more convincing. So yeah. Actually, that is a good point. Noam Chomsky is a great person to read. I should have recommended On Anarchism. On Anarchism is a great book for anyone just getting into leftism. In general, On Anarchism is probably better than most things that you're going to read, because I think, one, it's anarchism, which is great, and two, he uses a wide variety of thinkers from the left and breaks their positions down really well. So Chomsky's actually pretty great. I actually do like Chomsky. Even though like Chomsky, I think Chomsky and like Zizek like hate each other or something. Like they have like this kind of like feud, which I haven't really looked into, like, to be honest. But I'm kind of interested. I like it. It's like kind of like philosophy drama. But yeah. If I don't know the difference between objective and subjective morality, which book would you recommend? Actually, you know, like Christopher Culp, Knowing Moral Truth will just get you through the basics really simply, really quickly, because he'll outline the negative positions which have led to kind of the objective-subjective divide. Anyone else that would be an easy read that would kind of give you like the subjective, like the difference between objective and subjectivism? Off the top of my head, I mean, like the very start of After Virtue is great. That in the first few chapters really kind of outline each position from subjectivism, and then offer like a possible like rebuttal for the objectivist. Something that, just to give you an introduction, just go on Stanford Encyclopedia for Philosophy and type in like what would it wouldn't even be objectivism. You'd have to type in, because like objectivism really is like moral realism and the possibility of it obtaining. So like it's like moral realism and cognitivism. Most moral realists are cognitivists. So maybe like non-cog would be a good thing. So type in like non-cognitivism. You're probably going to find a lot of arguments for like moral non-cog, which will give you kind of like the subjectivist position. You'll find people like, I think it talks about people like Stevenson, Hare, Blackburn, and actually, you know, even IEP might even have a, not normally want to recommend the IEP, like, but yeah, maybe just clicking on the IEP's just ethics page. I think Stanford has something similar. Stanford is more complex. It's gonna give you like definition of morality, meta-ethics. Let's see if we can. Yeah, maybe going on to, if you got the time, just I'd say, you know, IEP on ethics, and then Stanford's Encyclopedia meta-ethics. Meta-ethics will give you a way better understanding of what we'll talk about in the subjectivism and objectivism, because that's essentially where the argument is. It's about, you know, about ethics itself. It's not just about like the normative ethics and so on. Yeah. Meta-ethics, I'd say on Stanford is probably your best bet as just an introduction, and that'll give you like a way better introduction than any book. If you have no idea what objectivism and subjectivism is, you don't need a book just yet. Just read an encyclopedia page from a peer review source, preferably Stanford, and yeah, that should give you a good insight, hopefully. Kierkegaard was the most profound thinker of the last century, Wittgenstein. You know, the thing is, actually, Kierkegaard's got some good stuff, man. Like, don't get me wrong, I disagree with almost everything he says, except for, like, he's got some good points, like, just about absurdism. Pretty much, like, you know, like, boredom is the root of all evil. Either or is, like, a really great book, actually, in general. Like, it's like, interesting, like, basically what he talks about in this, you know, these, what does he talk about, like, spheres, like, what are they called again? Is it like aesthetic spheres? What the hell are they called? Is it what spheres of existence? Yeah, the aesthetic, the ethical, and the religious. It's actually really interesting stuff, man. And you know, this idea of taking this blind leap of believing in God and stuff. Interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't agree with Kierkegaard, and I think he's not easy to read either. I don't think Kierkegaard's like the easiest to read, although he's nicer than a lot of other thinkers. I think people like say he's notoriously difficult. Like I've heard people say that they've really struggled with him, but I think it's like a preference. I don't think I struggled with Kierkegaard as much as I've struggled with like Kant. I think people like Kant read this awful, just awful, so bad. Like the fact that man was like, don't get me wrong, I'm a terrible writer. I am terrible. But Kant is just so bad. Capone, I recommend Kant. Kant's actually, like, if you want to just understand objectivism, like, you know, like your verse, like, foot in the door, like, Kant's great, like the groundwork, but like, read the groundwork, then just read Hegel, and he'll tell you why the groundwork has a lot of good stuff in it. Like, so one of the things I've been told that I really should do, and I probably should do it, is offer Kant's position as my own, pretty much, and then ground it in Hegel. So, like, use Kant's, like, talk of, like, duties and doing duty for duty's sake, which is what Hegel does, but then, you know, show why it must be the case through Hegel. I probably should do that, and I really need to do that, because I think the way I explain my ethics tends to get people like absolutely mind boggled. And if you want to see that, just watch me video on ethics, objective ethics explained. Yeah, definitely read. He's absolutely right saying reading an introduction to Kant. Like, absolutely. And then go on to the groundwork. The groundwork is by far the easiest to read of your stuff. Pure reason probably being the hardest, I'd say. Oh, hi, Aru. Alright, Cindy, calm down, Jesus. Making a channel next year. Alright, cool. Well, secret weapon. If you let them know what it is, like, hopefully, you know, see what it is. Yeah, okay. Cindy's a bit weird. Thank you, whoever deleted the message. I'm glad I didn't see that. Daniel, ask you anything. What can one hand hold that the other can't? Wait a minute. I know this is a joke. Or is it a riddle? Is it a riddle? What can one hand hold that the other can't? The other hand? What is the world? An illusion one can either submit or transcend. Well, I mean, like, his argument for transcendence is based off this notion of, like, the noumena, and don't really think that's a thing, man. Not in the same way. I don't think it's like never really like inaccessible. I mean, I know that he's arguing it is, but I don't think Hegel, and I don't think I would take that position either. So yeah, like let's just right, where have I gone? I'm probably gonna go off soon, guys, because I've just seen the time. It's like 12:30, so I'll probably be going off. I'll be back on Monday though. I'm gonna stream twice a week and hopefully get an upload in there for you guys, like as often as I can. What are your arguments against ethical egoism, Cosmic Skeptic? I would say that your understanding of self is social. I'd actually use like a Wittgensteinian type argument that language. I tried using this against them. Like private language is impossible, so the description of self and one's desires is also impossible privately. I'd say that our understanding of the phenomena is actually in relation to one another. So what we have is a common property which we need to understand, and that common property is subjectivity. So to do your own interests, you need to understand what is good for everyone else as well. You have to understand what is actually good for a subjective agent, and what it means to do the right thing, and the wrong thing is in relation to what ultimately brings the greatest overall value. You need to understand value to bring it around. So yeah, thank you, Anders. Libertarianism is in the passive sense. Oh god, where's it gone? The libertarianism in the passive sense, I guess, much like what it means to be an atheist. I don't know. Tarox, you're having a conversation there. How does everything exist? How does everything exist? I'm not going to lie. I don't have the answer to that one, man. I've been doing philosophy for a while, but I've never really transcended existence and saw it from the top down. So, when I reach that, like, platonic height from my winged chariot and I ascend that cosmic plane and I see the form of the essence of reality itself, and I look down and see the world as it truly is, as the spheres rotate around me, then I will one day get back to you with that question, that answer, and I'll tell you. I swear, I'll try. I mean, you might be in the world of appearances and you might, call us crazy and try to execute us, but if I do, eventually see the thing in and of itself, the thing in itself, I will tell you. I'll tell you exactly how it works. So yeah. Thanks, the Dragon Spirit. Inam Munsua says, how hard is it to pursue a uni philosophy degree without doing it in an A-level? I'm not sure. I did A-level philosophy, so I couldn't tell you. I would say that, like, the actual degree itself, like, could you learn it without doing the A-level? Yeah. Would I recommend the A-level? Yeah. But you can learn it all online. So if you did want to make your own kind of bridging course, pick up a book like that, read it, and you're sound. I mean, this is basically going to tell you more than you'll learn in the uni. Like, if I'm honest, that's kind of the crack. I'm making like a course for philosophy, as I've said before, and I'm putting more in it than I learned at uni in terms of lectures. Lectures are invaluable, and you'll get the experience of your lecturer, who will tell you sources much further beyond. They'll be able to critique your positions. They'll be able to give you, greater insight, and ultimately they'll be able to give you a degree, which is again why you go to university. But you can learn like the things you would learn in A-level separately. You can even just pick up an A-level book if you're that concerned. Pick up an A-level book, read through it, get the information you need, take notes. Was it active recall? Ask yourself questions about the information in the books. There's even stuff on how to read textbooks in the best way possible. Watch those videos, read the textbooks. You don't necessarily need the A-level. If you can get on the course, you'll be fine. But good luck. Nietzsche really wanted people to pillage and conquer, essentially be immoral. Yeah, well, I mean, like, yeah, well, he didn't want them to do that. Like, it was more of like, he saw that as the highest kind of good. Like, what does he talk about? The blonde beast, which, people say that, like, they can't understand how the Nazis picked up the ideology. But it's like, you read it and you're like, this is really anti-Semitic. The poison that the Jews spit upon the world is Christianity. And, and then... he's talking about how the blonde beast has conquered the world, like, and how it's like the best thing ever. It's like, I'm not gonna lie, like you can see how the Nazis would pick that up, man. They'd be like, wow, this book's great, and he's like, he's disgusted. And it's just weird, man. Like, honestly, I don't think Nietzsche was a Nazi. Don't get me wrong. I just think that, and I think that the idea of like someone believing in like I guess like aesthetic idealism would make him feel sick. But I think ultimately, like his philosophy is it is pretty disgusting. Like it is. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. Like you're saying people be amoral. It's like he believed that everything was amoral. He didn't believe in ethics and just basically wanted people to do what discharge their strength against the world to the greatest degree. Like, like express their subjectivity to the greatest degree, because that's what he saw freedom as. I mean, he's the ultimate libertarian in the sense of in the right wing sense, like of what it's been bastardized into. This idea of like individualistic freedom above all else. I think ultimately he's misunderstands freedom, and that's his main flaw, and that's why he's like positive philosophy lacks so much weight. You said that Nietzsche's negative/skeptical arguments were good. Isn't this all that is necessary for moral anti-realism, which would be just skepticism towards morality? Well, I said they were good. I never said they were right. Like I said that they for his time, like he's able to like present a situation which shows that morality is being infested with power structures, and that overall moral institutions are incapable of forming like correct and absolutely right judgments because of the genealogy of the morals that have developed. To represent the certain classes of individuals, and he's but he relates that a lot back to like essentially like things like Christianity and the moral institutions of his time. Ultimately, ethics doesn't have to be grounded like that, and I think ethics is far more grounded in something like veganism, which is based on sentientism, which I don't think Nietzsche really is offering a very good criticism of. I don't think he's got a real criticism of, except that like it overcomes the his old problem, and which I think it does, and I think that there's no real issues there. I think Nietzsche is absolutely wrong in that respect, but I do think Nietzsche has got some very if you read something like the genealogy or the birth of tragedy and you're not impressed, I'd be surprised. Also, he's a very good writer. It just sounds very nice. Like everything he writes is very like poetic. How much time do I invest in reading, researching, and writing philosophy each day? Not enough. That's my issue. I'd say a couple of hours every day, mostly. I do research mostly at the minute. Like, I'm not writing too much. I am writing in the sense I'm taking notes, writing myself questions, and I had been writing me PhD, but not enough. Like, I mean, recently I was rereading, I started mostly the stuff for the course, so like enough for the course, which is actually helping like some like a lot of the primary early Greeks and stuff, like Heraclitus, Parmenides, Plato, Aristotle. That's what I've been kind of doing at the minute. So yeah, I'm on Aristotle at the minute and doing that sort of stuff, so really interesting stuff. Right? Metaphysics. Nietzsche is no anti-Semitic. Well, it's not that he's anti-Semitic because he hates the Jews. In fact, he hates religion and thinks Christianity is like the lowest form of idealism, which has poisoned our souls. It's not that he's saying like the Jews are bad. He's saying Christianity is bad, and so it's kind of like not anti-Semitic at all, because he hates Christians way more than he hates Jews. He's more, if anything, I would call like. And I mean, even from understanding his idea of wanting to be like a hermit and relating to the hermits, he's almost misanthropic. He just does not give a shit about people. And I think he sees that everything around him is corrupt and bad, in the sense that it prevents him from expressing his freedom. And he clearly feels constant remorse, which is why he wants to get over this notion of guilt and wanting to will backwards. And, I think that, like, whatever it is, ultimately destroys his psyche. So... I don't think he's like anti-Semitic as much as he's like just a very, very unhappy man. Like, how can philosophy modernize? How could philosophy modernize? I think honestly, I think they, just make YouTube videos and stuff. I think it's already kind of doing it, like kind of just trying to relate to people. Just make things that are more approachable. And I think that philosophy is already kind of modernizing a bit. I think it's already kind of doing that. I think that it's trying to relate to other subjects a little bit more. I think that it's been bastardized in some other subjects, like maybe like certain like cultural studies courses and stuff. But ultimately, like the modernization of philosophy, I think is kind of already happening. Films, yeah, films is a good way. I agree. Vrew, I know that he doesn't specifically hate the Jews. I know that it's not about that. I mean, like, he talks about pretty much everyone except for those people who are, quote unquote, like, doing whatever the hell they want as bad. Like, he just basically talks about them as mindless and, injured. Like, he talks about the priest class as in essentially poisoning the individual and then having to drink the poison themselves to keep them in line. And this idea of like ideological, like he has an ideological disgust in certain like religions, in religion as a whole, and has an ideological disgust in basically rule following. And that's what I was trying to express. I understand I said he's anti-Semitic because he does. It's more of the fact of how he talks about the Jews there. You say he writes humorously, but I don't know, man. Like, I don't think he's an anti-Semitic in the sense that I don't think he hates the Jews more than he certainly hates Christians more. So like, it's not like a race thing. It's not like or like a culture thing. He just blamed the Jews for creating Christianity. He blamed like Jewish spiritualism as a revenge for Christianity. He's like, it's their final revenge, like as a thing. And I don't know if he's joking there. I mean, bear in mind, he was kind of going crazy when he was writing that. Like, he was losing his mind, I think, at the point of the genealogy, if I remember. So that's like one of his last like sort of things. Books before he starts like absolutely going mental. He does admire the Jews for that, actually. I will say that. He does admire the Jews for being able to be the spiritual class, like the priest class. That's what he admires about them. He says, like, essentially their ideology is strong. But, like, he hates their ideology as well. So, like, again, I don't think he's, like, anti-Semitic in the sense that he's, like genuinely hating Jews, sitting there hating Jews. Like, he just hates ideology. He has an ideological disgust towards Christianity. Video games about philosophy would be pretty cool as well, Dragon Spirit. Like, I haven't seen very many good ones. Bioshock, I thought was really good. Now it's kind of like really, really philosophical. Trying to think of some other really good, like, philosophy kind of games. Like, I think, to be honest, like, even just having moral dilemmas and stuff, like, in games is really great. Like, The Witcher or like, Fallout and things like that. You can get some, like, really deep moral choices where it's like, oh my god, what am I going to do? Especially The Witcher, where it's like, no matter what you do, sometimes you're just fucked. What is the music playing? It's like a lo-fi playlist on Epidemic Sound. Yeah. Unless you want like a specific song. Is it like the last song, or is it like, I can find out for you. Would love to hear your views on the issues of indigenous cultures and their demands that the dominant culture decolonize. Wow, I mean, that's not easy, man. I mean, to be honest, like, I think the reality is that everyone has to be considered in this, including the people who are, when we talk about indigenous people as if they're, I don't think they have any more right to the land at this point than the people who are there now. I think that the issue is that everyone in the society needs to be treated of equal weight and that they need to be considered within ethics. And I think that we can't undo the past and we should stop trying to undo the past. That doesn't make sense. Reparations. Should we pay them reparations? Possibly. Like, I say we, as in like the British people now, for example, who, like, actually the British people, I mean, like, it's like how far back are we going? Should my ancestors be paying reparations? Like, arguably they were like Viking invaders. And then, like, some of them were actually getting invaded by the Vikings. I'll pay myself reparations. I'm joking, obviously. But I mean, like, if we're talking about like, the Native Americans, the Aborigines in Australia, the people who are absolutely uncontestably damaged by colonialism and the horrors of colonialism. should they be paid reparations? I think that there should actually probably be paid reparations. I think, or less than even that they should be given equal opportunities within society and given fair treatment and paid reparations, even in the sense that, like, for example, probably paid reparations in the sense that they're given like like good schooling and a good livelihood, and given land for them to live on that they can, if they choose, live in that traditional way of life. I think the issue is that that way of life is typically dead. And I think we lie to ourselves when we tell ourselves that the Native American lifestyle is in any way, shape, or form alive anymore. For example, I've never seen any real, like, it seems that that culture was almost unequivocally destroyed, like absolutely annihilated, because of the horrors of colonialism, and that's the tragedy of it. And what we have is the genealogical descendants, and it's like it's genetic. There's no real cultural like claim there. They can't really like understand how to make the society that they once had, and it's like, would they even want to make it if they could? Do give them the option. I think so. Yeah, like, give them the land, let them have their autonomy if they want it. Give them the opportunity to have a decent state with that as well. They've had so much stolen from them, give back. And that's all I can really say. Are you going to switch from veganism to focus more on Marxism and leftist ideas and thinkers on your channel going forward? As I think, though, you focused a lot on ethics of veganism. I am actually going to be talking a lot more about politics as well, but I'm never going to stop talking about veganism because it is the greatest moral travesty of our time. The amount of harm that is produced within animal agriculture is incomprehensibly large. And I will never stop talking about that. I will talk about other forms of exploitation and ethical dilemmas, and I will continue to talk about philosophy in general. But I will never stop talking about veganism. Like, I'm gonna die talking about veganism. I'll be telling people on deathbed, I'll be like, remember me, be vegan, But also, I'm gonna talk more about leftist stuff as well. I'm gonna talk more about politics, economics, metaphysics, metaethics in general. But probably going more into politics and talking about, like, I have done some videos on it. I think I talked about like wage slavery in the past, but that was like a long time ago. But yeah, I'll probably go more into politics. Are you going to, what was it? Do you think that written advancements in philosophy can be done in ways other than writing? Yeah, I mean, like, you could have like Shakespeare. Like, Shakespeare did some pretty great like philosophy, I would say. Writing fiction, like novels. I think you can have novels that, really better philosophy and like the depth and the thinking of our time. Absolutely. Kojima is but like Metal Gear and that. But apparently I heard Death Stranding's really terrible. And from what I did see, it does look like a walking simulator, and the FPS in it looks absolutely terrible. The storyline looks kind of terrible, like the scripting. I don't know about the story itself, but the scripting of the game looks so bad, guys. So bad. Like, kind of like cringy. Like, I think Donkey talked about it. It was like kind of cringy 12-year-olds trying to be deep. So I'm going to put the music back on. Probably gonna shoot off very soon, guys. Sorry, I was actually just, I took the time there because, Jerry, I just saw your thing. I was just having a look at the non-identity problem. It's been a while since anyone's ever brought it up. And I haven't read Prophet in a long time. So he talks about this. But, yeah, I don't think I've got really an answer for you so much. What was your any thoughts on the non-identity problem? Not necessarily an answer for it. It makes it a little bit better, doesn't it? Like, you know, you're not just like, have you solved it yet? Thoughts on the so if I understand the non-identity problem, it's essentially, can an act be wrong if there is no one to be harmed in it? That's essentially the kind of the point. I do think that, like, I do think that an act can only be wrong if there are individuals that it can be harmed by it. I think that the reason that we rule follow, though, is in respect to those individuals, and that's kind of how our moral institutions have developed. Moral intuitions are, I don't really care about them at all. I don't care about intuitionism. I don't care about moral sense. I think Kant calls it. I see it as ungrounded and irrational. So I haven't really probably give you anything to work with there. But yeah, I mean, I could make a video on it if you want, like how I would respond to the non-identity problem, if you'd like. Or if anyone wants any video suggestions, you know, if you go on my Discord, you can make a suggestion there in the video suggestions and I will actually get it done. Hopefully anyway. Do you play many games, PP? Yeah, man, like, I don't get enough time to play them, really. Like, I'm mostly, like, if I do get to play games, I'm just playing something, like, quick, like Overwatch or, like, League of Legends or something. And I'm not really getting anything, like, I'm not really getting, like, any, like, really hard-hitting games anymore. Like, getting a chance to play, like, anything with a storyline. If I've got time to play something with a storyline, I'm feeling guilty for not doing work. Like, really guilty for not doing work. Like... Especially now, because I'm trying to, like, I want to turn this into a business, guys, in the sense I want to make me income. Like, I'm not trying to be, like, a corporation, some evil, like, you know, like, you know, I'm trying to conquer the world with, like, you know, make as much money as possible. But, like, I want to do this full time. I want to, like, essentially bring you guys philosophy content and engage with you guys in a way that educates the masses with philosophy to a much greater degree than I have been doing. And so I really do hope to make an income off this. So, like, every time I think about, like, you know, playing games, like anything with a storyline for a while, I just get guilty, man. I'm like, oh my god, I should be doing work. I should be doing a YouTube video, or I should be doing me PhD, man. And I'm like, oh god, and I can't enjoy it anymore, even though it's probably the thing that would, like, relax us the most and allow us to, like, actually, you know, do work to a greater degree. And maybe I just need to spend more time playing games, man. Maybe I do. Maybe I should stream them. I don't know if you would be interested in this streaming games and stuff. And if you are, like, I can stream games, like, a bit, you know, when I'm talking philosophy, stream games. I'm looking to do more debates and stuff as well. I could debate and stuff when I'm streaming games. But I don't know if you need, like, another gaming stream to watch, guys. There's a kind of few out there, but, you know, if you still want us to see, there's, like, streaming games when I'm talking philosophy, you know, like, yeah, cool. Have I played Final Fantasy VII? I haven't, though. I haven't. And I've heard that I'm terrible. I've seen the gameplay of you know, it's and the thing is, from what I've heard, that and this is Donkey again, the original does look actually kind of better, like, in the way that it's structured. I think that they've kind of grinded out the game a lot more. Yeah, Jerry, I'll do that. So a video on the non-identity problem, you know, I'll actually write that down. Non-identity problem. And you want to specifically hear about global warming? I'll keep that in mind, man. Drop them in the comment section below as well, like, if you just want to hear something, because then it's more permanent and it's something I can refer back to. The chat's, like, a little bit more of, like, difficult to get back to. I've got to, like, scroll to the right place and stuff. Stream games. Yeah, man. I'm not going to stream League. I am so bad at League. Unless you want to watch someone absolutely suck and feed for hours, just like absolutely terribly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like I'm not going to stream League. But yeah, I know that Final Fantasy VII is pretty deep. Like, I've not ruined it for anyone. So spoilers, if anyone, is interested in Final Fantasy VII, one of the things that actually at the end of the game that that really kind of took me like by it is like everyone gets killed. From what I'm understanding, like everyone just dies anyway. Like the whole the whole thing is that like they're trying to stop this, like, is it like a meteor hitting Earth or something, and like everyone just dies, like and like the whole point is like with the game, like and it's like this kind of like constant fight to like kind of save as many people as possible and so on. Or is it the city? Is it the aspect of the part of the city that dies? It gets blown up. That's right, isn't it? It gets blown up, and yeah, like it just seemed like pretty interesting. I think like there's very like kind of like deep ramifications in that, and I think there was a lot of older games like in the time of the PS1, PS2 era that I think were brilliant, really, and they had a lot more storyline in them, and for a lot more reasonable prices. I don't know what the hell happened to games, man, and why they've got to cost £60 a pop, but I don't. Anyway, capitalism. I'm curious, do you meditate? I don't really. I probably should. I think meditation is useful. I think it's actually really good to like de-stress and like kind of like center oneself. And the meditations I do like that I have done in the past, the kind of things that I do, or like the Buddhist meditation, for example, to think about everyone as your mother or a loved one, to gain moral perspective on how you should treat another individual. To kind of inspire like an empathetic response and kind of allow me to try and connect to another individual in a way that I think reflects their inherent worth. And another one I've done is and I do quite often is to imagine that you're breathing in darkness and exhaling light. I think that's quite a peaceful one, and it kind of gives a sense that like people say like, oh, but I'd rather breathe in light than and exhale darkness, and it's like, no, you are the filter. You are the filter. And I think that's a really lovely meditation. Soul Reaver is so good. Oh my god, I love Soul Reaver. I actually have Soul Reaver. If you want us to stream that, I will stream Soul Reaver too. The Legacy of Kain. That is my childhood right there. I don't know if it should have been, but it's my child. I will stream Soul Reaver. I've been like amazed at one point in Soul Reaver, like like just the like when one surpasses his master and all that, and it's like you get and it's showing you how he like became like he got infused with the Soul Reaver and everything. Oh man, and like when you get like the different power-ups for like the Soul Reaver, and you just like get them like different, and it would have like these cinematics which now are graphically terrible, like so bad, but at the time I was like, wow, these are amazing. I'm like, this is incredible. Like you'd see like like he'd fly into the sun or something, and you'd be like, oh my god, this is the best graphics I've ever seen. I remember feeling that way about like Kingdom Hearts and stuff. Seeing Kingdom Hearts when I was young, I was like, wow, these cinematics are incredible. I'm like, this looks real. It's more real than real. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think the graphics were amazing for that time. But like now I'm looking, I'm like, oh my god, like, the hell? You see some games and like the graphics just have aged so bad, and it just doesn't make any sense. I think like one of the lucky things is like Crash Bandicoot. I don't think that aged badly at all. And I think I was watching the guy like making why it didn't. My brother was in prison for 6 months and loved playing Soul Reaver. That does not sound good for our prison system, does it? Like, I'm like, oh, childhood was great. I loved Soul Reaver. And you're like, I went to prison. Wasn't that so fun? But I'm assuming that it was a very petty crime, and that's why he was only in for 6 months. So I guess like everyone needs entertainment. But I think I don't think we should be giving prisoners PlayStations, man. Nah. That's just like not a good idea. Kingdom Hearts was the bomb, but why was Kingdom Hearts 2 not as good? And then Kingdom Hearts 3 looks dreadful. Kingdom Hearts 2 I didn't even like that much, right? Like I played that and it's okay, but it's like it's just like it took a lot of the fun out of it. Like you just there's no like the mechanics are boring in Kingdom Hearts 2. Like and everything seems rushed. Like you're rushing from one place to the next. And then, oh, you crashed his car and got a lengthy. Oh, it's quite a lengthy sentence for crashing your car. Jesus. Anyway, it shouldn't have probably went to prison for that, in my opinion. To be honest, like I don't believe that prison's like it shouldn't be this one size fits all solution. Like maybe like if he did something wrong, community service and stuff like that, like whatever he was doing and why he was doing it, like inhibit that desire within him, and like that's the idea of rehabilitation. Prison just make just a community of bloody criminals. You don't want to put someone who's like perhaps a functioning just member of society in with a bunch of people who are going to be like, do you want to know how to get away with crimes? It's not a good thing, and it's ultimately restricting people's freedom for no reason. Like it's not really, and people like, and then if it's not even that bad, then they're just going to be like, right, well that wasn't so bad. Like why the hell was I scared of prison again? Like there's too many things. There's too much problems with it, right? I don't know what the sound of like the audio was like in terms of like the room. I don't know if you can hear much of like background noise or anything. Let us know if you can. But you shouldn't. I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible. He was addicted to painkillers. The guy sounds like he needed like rehab more than bloody. If no one else got hurt, he sounds like he needed rehab more than prison. Like, and I'm glad he's doing better. I'm glad he's doing better, man. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts 2 was terrible. Like, I think compared to number 1. And I think number 3 looks really bad as well. You think the point of the dragon says that thinks the point of prison should be about how to get people to think of how they can better society. I think that would be a good idea. Like education, like ethical education, would be essential for prisoners. I don't know what we don't teach kids ethics. We don't teach prisoners ethics. We don't have anything on ethics. And then I don't know, man. Like I think ultimately as well, like the punishment itself is not a good one. It's like a one size all fits punishment, and I think Foucault gives a really good explanation at the start of like I think discipline and punish, like why it came about, and essentially like the alternative for what was being debated at the time. This idea of inspiring an individual, like the deterrence of inspiring an individual, like to irritate the very desire that would commit the crime, sounds much better in the form of deterrent. It also sounds like a better form of rehabilitation. And then, as you said, like getting people to think about that, like moral education, I think would be brilliant about this. Joey Armstrong learned about veganism in prison. Yeah, I heard that he kind of, and that's when he changed his life around and stuff. But he went like plant-based first, wasn't it? Like it wasn't like, from what I'm aware, like he didn't pick up on the ethics straight away in prison. It wasn't like, like it wasn't educated in ethics and then like kind of come to like a stronger conclusion. With Joey. Yeah, I'm probably going to shoot off now, guys. It's like 1 a.m. here. I hope you've all enjoyed the stream. Any like final questions or anything that you just want to ask, fire them into the chat now, and I'll answer them. And I'll see you Monday. I'll be streaming Monday. I'm gonna probably aim from 4 till 9 this time. Like I think I'll probably go a bit earlier. Yeah. And once again, for the millionth time maybe, I cannot express my gratitude to the people that have helped get this equipment. Your generosity, the fact that you were able to just be willing to just sort of, just give that money away, with no expectations of anything back, and just to help me out in that scenario is really lovely and help out the channel and to get things back on track. I know you didn't expect anything back, but I will be gifting everyone who donated the course that I'm making, a very comprehensive course, and it'll include a lot of content that won't be available on my channel, and we'll have a great amount of depth to it. And it's no matter how much you paid, like how much you donated. So thank you everyone who helped get this equipment. It's honestly amazing. Thank you so much. I will check my Discord, mate. Yeah. Carson G, you should check out Why Fur is Not Murder by Roderick Long. It gives an interesting case against the use of force to protect animals. I'll check it out. I'll probably argue against it. Obviously I can't say that until I read it, but if it's defending fur, I don't think, from what I've seen, there's no defensible position for the unnecessary suffering, causing the unnecessary suffering of animals. So yeah. Yeah, you can quickly ask an animal ethics question, Drama Llama. Stock investor, really sorry, mate. I'm literally about to, I'm actually about to end the stream. Like, you caught us just at the end. So if you've got a quick question you'd like to ask, fire it into the chat, and I'll answer that now. I'll leave at I don't know if I'll be putting my course on Skillshare. I'll probably be putting it on Teachable, maybe Udemy. I don't know about Skillshare because of the way that they structure their things, but I might put it on Skillshare. We'll see. I might put it on Skillshare. I'm not sure. All right, hiya Logan. Nice to see you. Well, have a nice night anyway. I'm sorry that you caught the end of the stream, but nice to see you here. Drama Llama, but does something like eggs actually require exploitation, or does it just happen to maximize profits like the production of smartphones? No, it requires it. So to produce eggs, you need to impregnate chickens. To produce the chickens, as in the hens that lay eggs. So although eggs are unfertilized, like the ones that you typically buy in the supermarket, there is a separate chicken production industry that is producing egg-laying hens, right, capable of producing eggs. Now, when you try and produce those hens, you are going to produce 50% of them as males, okay? And those 50% are essentially losses. If they are kept alive, they are essentially going to cause more profit loss than they would allow for the benefit of the corporation. So they're dead. They're killed at birth. Put in giant macerators, put in bin bags even at times, and thrown in the trash, right? Not treated ethically. 100% always getting killed. And the business itself, the business model wouldn't be sustainable if they weren't. Now, if you could genetically modify the chickens to only have female hens, fertilized, it's always going to be a girl, it would still be unethical. The industry itself is going to exploit them. And you say that it's like smartphones, yeah, it would be like extreme exploitation, though, to the point in which they're actually using someone as a means to an end. Two, the chicken is not going to be kept after it's spent. So there is only a period of time within a hen's life in which it's capable of laying eggs in a profitable way. Now, no matter what industry it is, it will always have to get rid of those hens. If it doesn't, it's not profitable and the industry will collapse. If it's someone having, let's say, hens at home, apparently backyard hens, it's I think that eggs are bad for you. Probably shouldn't eat them, for one. I think that getting, if you're, rescuing a hen and you've saved it from slaughter, it's laying its eggs. Apparently they get defensive over their eggs for a short time, and so you shouldn't take them then. Apparently they lose interest in them after a while. And apparently better for them then is to actually feed them the egg back to increase their calcium. But let's say you're supplementing that calcium. They don't care about the eggs. It's just going to go bad from what I'm aware. And let's say you're taking it away anyway. Do I think there's a real problem with eating it? Probably not. Do I think that that is an ethically kind of viable, like real life situation? No, that's like not going to happen. I mean, we're talking about someone who's like, let's say, got, and I don't think you should get them and as well treat animals specifically well because of what you can get out of them. I think that would be an issue as well. Like you're being unvirtuous. You're being immoral in the sense that you're only caring about them because they can benefit you. In which case, you don't really care about them. You care about you. You're just using them as means to an end. Now, if let's say you do care about the animal and that you can't eat their eggs and they're not interested, and you're also fortifying that calcium, and you're only doing it so long until that's spent, and then you're going to keep them for the rest of their lives and let them live long, happy lives to the greatest overall possibility you can. Do I think that is unethical? If you eat that egg that was otherwise going to get like thrown in the trash, like, you know, like thrown in the bin, like destroyed, like, you know, rot or whatever. Like, no, I don't think it's unethical. I think that you should probably think about your own health maybe, but ultimately not the worst thing that could happen. Feed it to the chicken if you can. So yeah, thank you everyone who's watched this stream. Thank you Wicked, thank you the Dragon, thank you everyone else who's sorry, thank you. Goodbye Wicked, goodbye Dragon. Thank you for saying goodbye. I'm very tired now, as you can probably guess. And thank you everyone who helped obviously with the mic, and thank you everyone who's watched. Hope you all have a really lovely night. And I'll catch you Monday. So take it easy, guys, and peace. Oh, actually. And remember, God damn it, it's been so long, I forgot my own outro. And as always, try to gain some perspective.